The courtroom buzzed with hushed whispers. The walls, adorned with gold trim and dark wood, seemed to echo with the weight of history, yet today, there was no calm. Today, there was only tension, an electric charge hanging in the air. All eyes were on the man who walked into the room with an air of quiet confidence. Yet beneath that composed exterior, something seemed to simmer, something that suggested the storm was far from over. Hit subscribe and leave a comment with where you're watching from. This story might just spark a new beginning. What's one thing that always pushes you forward, even when things get tough? Elon Musk. He strolled toward the defendant's table, his tall figure commanding attention, yet there was no arrogance in his stride. No one could ignore him, and yet, that's exactly what the judge had been trying to do since the trial began. Judge Harper was seated at the bench, her sharp eyes glaring down at Musk, her mouth twitching with what appeared to be a faint smirk. She had made it clear from the start that she wasn't impressed with his billionaire status or his role in reshaping the future. No, to her, Elon Musk was just another businessman who needed to be put in his place. And she wasn't about to make any exceptions, no matter how many times the media fawned over him. "Mr. Musk," she began, her voice dripping with condescension as she glanced at him over the top of her glasses. "I trust you understand the seriousness of these proceedings?" Elon didn't flinch. He simply nodded, his sharp eyes focused on the judge, but his posture remained relaxed. There was something in the way he held himself, as if he had faced far worse challenges than this. "Yes, Your Honor," Elon replied evenly, his tone calm, almost too calm. "I understand." The judge's lips curled into a smile, one that was more mocking than friendly. She leaned forward, her voice cutting through the room. "You understand, do you? Because from where I'm standing, it seems like you're more focused on saving face than on answering the serious charges brought against you. Are you just here to play the game, Mr. Musk?" The gallery of observers, including reporters and curious onlookers, shifted in their seats. Everyone knew this trial was no ordinary case. It was a spectacle, a showdown between one of the world's most powerful and controversial tech moguls and the legal system that had to decide whether his empire would crumble. Elon remained silent for a moment, his fingers tapping lightly on the table in front of him. He wasn't rattled, and that irked Judge Harper. She had expected him to lose his cool by now, but instead, he was unfazed. It made her nervous in a way she couldn't quite place. "Your Honor," Elon began, his voice cool but filled with an undeniable edge, "I'm not here to play any games. I'm here because the facts of this case will prove the truth, and the truth always prevails." The judge scoffed, clearly unimpressed with his deflection. "We'll see about that," she muttered, leaning back in her chair. "You may proceed, Mr. Musk, but let's not forget who's in charge here." The tension in the courtroom thickened. It wasn't just the judge's disdain for Elon that was obvious. It was the collective skepticism of everyone in the room. The prosecutor, a sharp and meticulous woman named Valerie Jackson, stood tall, ready to pounce on any weaknesses in Musk's defense. A smirk played across her lips as she prepared her opening statement, knowing full well that she had the upper hand. The case against Musk and his company, Tesla, was serious. Allegations of negligence and fraud were serious charges, charges that could shatter everything Elon had worked so hard to build. The audience was on edge, waiting for the drama to unfold. "Ladies and gentlemen of the jury," Prosecutor Jackson began, her voice smooth and calculated. "We are here today because Elon Musk and his company have repeatedly failed to live up to the standards expected of them, to their investors, and to the public. Evidence will show that their promises were not only misleading, but downright fraudulent." She paused, letting her words sink in. "If you thought Tesla was a revolutionary company, think again. The facts we're presenting will show a pattern of deception, manipulation, and corporate greed." Elon didn't flinch. He'd heard it all before, but this time was different. This time, the stakes were higher. The future of his company, his legacy, and his reputation were on the line. And yet, despite the crushing weight of it all, Elon's gaze never wavered. In the gallery, whispers spread like wildfire. Some people were rooting for him, while others saw this as a chance to tear him down. The judge was looking for any reason to make a point. It was clear. This wasn't going to be easy for him, but something was different today. For once, Elon didn't feel like he was fighting for survival. Instead, he was fighting for something much greater, a chance to outsmart the system, to prove that even the mighty could fall if they underestimated him. As Jackson continued with her opening remarks, Elon's mind wandered for just a moment. He thought about the countless hours spent with his legal team, strategizing, planning, and building their defense. He knew they were in this together. And despite the court's hostility, despite the world watching, he had one thing they didn't: his mind. And that was something no one could take away. Hit subscribe and leave a comment with where you're watching from. The narrator's voice cut through the tense atmosphere. This story might just spark a new beginning. What's one thing that always pushes you forward, even when things get tough? The courtroom settled into an eerie silence. Elon's eyes narrowed as he focused on the task at hand. This was far from over. And no matter how hard they tried to tear him down, Elon Musk was determined to show them just how wrong they were. The game was on. The buzz of the courtroom faded as Elon Musk leaned back in his chair. His thoughts drifted far from the present. The harsh glare of the judge, the relentless accusations of the prosecutor. It all seemed distant, almost irrelevant in that moment. Instead, he was transported to another time, another place, his childhood. Elon's early years were far from the glamorous success he was known for today. Born in Pretoria, South Africa, to a Canadian mother and South African father, his life was a complex mix of privilege and hardship. His father, Elon Musk, was a tough, often distant figure, a man who believed that success was earned through grit and toughness, but one whose harsh demeanor left deep scars on his son. As a boy, Elon wasn't the natural prodigy the world would later come to know. He was an introverted kid with a vivid imagination, more comfortable in books than in playground games. But there was something inside of him, a burning curiosity that couldn't be extinguished. Even as a child, he questioned the world around him, the rules that others followed without ever thinking twice. He remembered the long, lonely hours in his room, poring over books about science, engineering, and technology. His mother, May Musk, a model and dietitian, was the one constant support in his life. Despite the turbulence at home, she always encouraged Elon's intellectual pursuits. She saw potential in him that others didn't. She believed in him when no one else did. "You can do anything you set your mind to, Elon," she would say, her voice filled with the unwavering confidence that seemed to flow through her veins. But Elon didn't believe her at first. The odds stacked against him seemed too high. He was an awkward, socially anxious boy who struggled to fit in. In high school, he was often bullied by his peers for being different. His obsession with computers, space, and technology made him an outsider. But it was also during those years that Elon started to understand one thing. The world was changing, and he was determined to be a part of it. When he was 12, he sold his first piece of software, a game called Blaster, for $500. It wasn't much, but it was a sign of things to come. From that moment on, he knew that his future lay in technology, and that belief fueled his every step. Years later, Elon would leave South Africa to pursue his dreams in North America. He attended Queen's University in Canada for 2 years before transferring to the University of Pennsylvania in the United States. There, he studied physics and economics, 2 disciplines that would shape his vision for the future. But even as a student, he saw the world differently. He didn't just want to learn. He wanted to change everything. Elon's first venture into the tech world came when he co-founded Zip2, a company that created online city guides for newspapers. It wasn't glamorous, but it was a stepping stone. After selling Zip2 for nearly $300 million, he founded X.com, which would later become PayPal. The rest, as they say, was history. The money he made from PayPal allowed him to pursue his true passions, space exploration and electric cars. But the road was never easy. Musk had faced countless challenges along the way: criticism, skepticism, and failure. His ventures were often seen as wild ambitions, doomed to fail. Tesla, in particular, was seen as an impossible dream. The idea of creating electric vehicles that could rival traditional cars seemed laughable to many. But Elon didn't listen to the critics. He never had. In the courtroom today, that same defiant spirit was alive. He had fought to build everything he had, brick by brick. Every success, every setback. It was all part of the journey that had led him here. But there was more to the story than just the tech mogul everyone saw today. Elon had faced personal demons too. He had suffered from a painful divorce, endured public scrutiny over his controversial statements and actions, and even dealt with health issues that nearly took him down. Yet, through it all, one thing remained constant: his unwavering belief in the future. As the trial raged on, Elon's mind briefly flickered to the personal relationships that had shaped him. The memories of his father's harsh criticism and his mother's steadfast belief in him were interwoven. His father had taught him to never back down, to fight for what he believed in, no matter how impossible it seemed. His mother had taught him to stay grounded, to trust in his own abilities, and to remain kind in the face of adversity. And then, there was his relationship with his closest allies, the people who had stood by him through the ups and downs of his career. His team at Tesla, his engineers, his friends. They believed in him, even when the world didn't. And that was a feeling Elon cherished more than anything. He looked at his legal team sitting beside him. They were young, sharp, and innovative, much like him. They had worked tirelessly behind the scenes, preparing for this moment. One of them, Sophia, was especially dedicated. She had joined his team years ago, fresh out of law school, and had proven to be an invaluable asset. Her keen mind and passion for justice reminded Elon of his own determination to change the world. Sophia had been with him through thick and thin, guiding him through the maze of legal battles that seemed endless. And today, she was more than just a lawyer. She was a symbol of what he had built, a team of people who believed in his vision, who shared his dreams. "We're going to win this," Sophia had whispered to him earlier. "You've done far more than anyone thought possible. This is just another challenge to overcome." As the trial continued, Elon couldn't help but feel that his journey was coming full circle. From the awkward, bullied kid in South Africa to the CEO of one of the most powerful companies in the world, he had faced so many obstacles. And yet, the one thing that had never wavered was his belief in himself and the future he was working toward. But now, standing in this courtroom, facing charges that threatened to unravel everything he had worked for, Elon knew that this trial was the ultimate test. This wasn't just about money or power. This was about proving to the world that he wasn't just a businessman or a tech mogul. He was a visionary, a man who had changed the world and would continue to do so, no matter the odds. As the trial's first day wrapped up and the room cleared, Elon couldn't help but feel a sense of calm. He had been here before, underestimated, ridiculed, and doubted, but he had always come out on top. And today? Today was no different. The courtroom settled into an uneasy silence as the second day of the trial began. The air felt thick with anticipation, and for many, this wasn't just a trial. It was a spectacle. Elon Musk was no stranger to the public eye, but today, the stakes were higher than ever. It wasn't just his company on the line. It was his legacy. Every word, every gesture, would be scrutinized and dissected by the media, the jury, and the world. The courtroom had already seen its fair share of drama. Judge Harper's scornful remarks toward Elon had made headlines. Prosecutor Valerie Jackson had laid out her case with precision, casting Musk's rise to success as a tale of deception and corporate greed. Today, though, the focus would shift from accusations to the defense. Elon sat tall, his usual confidence replaced by a quiet determination. His legal team, a mix of brilliant young minds, had spent sleepless nights preparing for this moment. They knew what was at stake, and they knew that the outcome of this trial would ripple far beyond this room. This wasn't just about defending Tesla. It was about defending everything Elon had worked for. Sophia, his most trusted lawyer, stood up first. She was calm, poised, and ready. The courtroom watched as she walked toward the front, her steps measured, her eyes fixed on the judge. Elon could feel his pulse quicken as she began to speak. "Ladies and gentlemen of the jury, we stand before you today not to defend a man. No, we're here to defend a vision. A vision that has revolutionized the way we think about energy, about transportation, about the future itself." Sophia's words rang with conviction. Her voice was steady, but there was a fire behind it. Elon watched her with admiration. He had always known that this trial would come down to more than just legal arguments. It was about the bigger picture, about proving that his company wasn't just a business, it was a movement. She paused for a moment, allowing her words to sink in. We are not here to deny the challenges Tesla has faced, but to paint our client, Elon Musk, as a man who has intentionally misled anyone is not only inaccurate, it's offensive. We will show you, with clear evidence, that these charges are based on misconceptions, misunderstandings, and a disregard for the larger picture. Sophia turned toward the jury, her gaze unwavering. Elon Musk isn't just an entrepreneur. He's a visionary, a man who has dedicated his life to changing the world. Yes, there have been setbacks, but those setbacks don't define him. They don't define Tesla. What defines them is the unyielding pursuit of a cleaner, more sustainable future for all of us. Elon's heart swelled with pride as Sophia continued to lay out their defense. He knew that this wasn't just about protecting himself. It was about defending every single person who believed in Tesla, every engineer who worked tirelessly to build something groundbreaking, every customer who put their trust in his company. Sophia's speech was more than just a legal argument. It was a manifesto for the future. Let's talk about the facts, she said, her voice cutting through the tension in the room. The accusations leveled against Elon Musk and Tesla stem from a few key moments where things didn't go as planned. But in business, things rarely go according to plan. What matters is how you respond to failure. And what we have here is a man who has responded with innovation, with perseverance, and with an unwavering commitment to his goals. Sophia continued, outlining key moments in Tesla's history. She spoke of the company's early struggles, the setbacks that nearly sunk them, and how Elon had fought to keep the company afloat. She spoke of the challenges with production, the difficulties with the Model 3, and how Elon had poured his own resources into keeping the company alive when others would have walked away. The defense was clear. Elon Musk was not a man who took shortcuts or misled the public. He was a man who had made mistakes, yes, but who had always been transparent about them and had always learned from them. Sophia's closing argument on the first day left the courtroom in stunned silence. Ladies and gentlemen, this isn't a case about fraud. This is a case about resilience. It's a case about a man who refused to give up on his dream of changing the world, even when the odds were stacked against him. And that's the truth. No amount of accusation can change that. As she finished, the courtroom seemed to breathe in unison, the tension lingering in the air. Elon let out a slow breath, feeling the weight of the moment. He was under no illusion that this trial would be easy, but at least he had the right people in his corner. People who believed in him, who understood the magnitude of what he was trying to accomplish. But the case wasn't over. Not by a long shot. Judge Harper's eyes narrowed as she addressed the court. I appreciate your opening statements, Ms. Thompson, she said, referring to Sophia by her last name. But let's not forget that we're here to determine whether these charges have merit. The prosecution will now present its case in full. Elon felt a chill run down his spine as the prosecutor, Valerie Jackson, rose to her feet. She was composed, but her eyes were sharp, calculating. She had been preparing for this moment, and Elon could feel the storm coming. I'll keep this simple, Jackson began, her voice firm. We are here because Elon Musk's actions and the actions of Tesla's leadership have misled the public. His promises have been reckless, and those promises, whether you choose to believe it or not, have cost investors and consumers dearly. She turned toward Elon, her gaze direct. Mr. Musk, you have claimed that you're building the future. But today, we will show that the future you promised is nothing but smoke and mirrors. The words hung in the air, and for a moment, Elon felt the weight of them. The courtroom had seen the defense, but the prosecution was now gearing up for their own full-scale assault. Sophia looked back at Elon and gave him a reassuring nod. We're ready for this, she whispered. The battle for the future was just beginning. The next few days were a whirlwind of legal strategy, courtroom theatrics, and the constant weight of public scrutiny. The battle for Elon Musk's legacy had taken on a life of its own, and with each passing hour, it felt more like a high-stakes game of chess than a simple trial. The prosecution was relentless, and Judge Harper's animosity toward him was palpable. Yet, Elon remained calm, steadfast, as his legal team prepared for the war ahead. The courtroom was packed with reporters, lawyers, and spectators, all waiting for the next move. The trial had taken on a rhythm, with each side laying out their arguments, the tension building, waiting for that one defining moment. Elon felt it too, the sense that the entire world was watching him, waiting for him to slip up. But he wouldn't slip. Not this time. The prosecution had begun to lay out their case with devastating precision. Valerie Jackson, the lead prosecutor, was a force to be reckoned with. She was methodical, sharp, and relentless in her pursuit of what she believed was the truth. She painted Elon Musk as a man who was so consumed by his own vision that he would stop at nothing to get there, even if it meant deceiving investors and consumers. "Ladies and gentlemen," Jackson began, her voice steady, "we are not here to question Elon Musk's intelligence or ambition, but we are here to question his integrity. The evidence we are about to present will show that his statements were not simply misguided. They were lies. Lies that cost people their hard-earned money, their trust, and their faith in the very companies he built." She turned toward Elon, her gaze locking onto him with an intensity that sent a ripple of unease through the room. "Mr. Musk, you stand here today because of your actions that misled not only investors but the entire world." Elon could feel the weight of her words, but he didn't flinch. Instead, he sat in silence, his mind focused on the task at hand. He had been through worse. He had been ridiculed, belittled, and called every name under the sun. But now, it wasn't about him. It was about proving that Tesla wasn't just a company. It was a movement that had the power to change the world. The evidence was laid out piece by piece. Emails, text messages, and interviews. Statements that seemed to promise things Tesla had yet to deliver, or worse, things that never came close to being true. The prosecution argued that these missteps were not innocent mistakes, but deliberate attempts to manipulate stock prices and mislead the public. And there was one statement that stood out above the rest, the infamous tweet Elon had sent out, declaring that he had secured funding to take Tesla private at $420 a share. It had sent shockwaves through the stock market, causing Tesla's stock price to soar, only to crash once it was revealed that the deal wasn't even close to happening. "This tweet," Jackson said, holding up a printed copy of Elon's post, "is a perfect example of what we are dealing with. A man who used his platform, his influence, to manipulate the market for his own benefit." The room fell silent as the words hung in the air. Elon could feel the weight of them, the public perception of his actions, but he wasn't about to let them define him. "I didn't mislead anyone," Elon said quietly, but firmly, breaking the silence. "That tweet was a genuine expression of my belief that taking Tesla private would be the right thing to do. I was wrong about the timing, but my intentions were never to deceive." Judge Harper's cold gaze turned toward Elon as she spoke. "Mr. Musk, while I respect your right to express your opinion, it seems that your opinions have a habit of affecting the stock market and the livelihoods of your investors. It's not the first time this court has dealt with high-profile individuals who believe their words can shape the world around them. But we must remember, your words are not just words. They are powerful instruments with consequences." Elon remained calm, his eyes never leaving the judge. He understood the gravity of the situation. But this was far from the first time his vision had been misunderstood. He had built his companies from the ground up, with nothing but conviction and belief in the future. And no matter how much the world tried to tear him down, he wasn't going to stop now. Sophia, his lead attorney, stood up once again, her voice calm but strong. "Your Honor, while we acknowledge that the tweet in question may have caused confusion, it's important to understand the context in which it was made. Elon Musk was not attempting to manipulate the market. His intentions were in line with his vision for the future, one that includes bringing Tesla to a place where it could be independent from the volatility of the public stock market." Sophia's defense was built on the idea that Elon's words, while perhaps poorly timed, were always driven by a desire to do what was best for Tesla and its employees. They would argue that the public's misinterpretation of his statement was not his fault, and that the resulting fluctuations in the stock price were merely a byproduct of a much larger vision. Sophia turned toward the jury, her voice soft but persuasive. "What you're hearing today isn't just a case about one tweet. It's a case about a man who has revolutionized not one, but two industries, electric vehicles and space exploration. And the reason he's here today is simple. His ambition. He dared to do what no one thought was possible, and with that ambition comes risk. But it's that very risk that has brought us to the cusp of a future we never imagined. Elon could feel the tide turning, if only slightly. It was clear that the jury was divided. Some seemed to buy into the prosecution's argument, while others were beginning to understand the bigger picture, Elon's vision for the future of humanity. And then, as the day drew to a close, the judge made a decision that shocked everyone. "We will adjourn for the day," Judge Harper said, her voice cold. "Tomorrow, we will hear from the defense witnesses. We expect them to present clear, undeniable evidence to counter the accusations brought against Mr. Musk. Until then, this trial will pause." Elon stood up, his mind already focused on the next step. The battle was far from over. He had a long way to go before he could truly prove his innocence. But one thing was clear. He wasn't going to back down. Not now. Not ever. As he walked out of the courtroom, his legal team by his side, he couldn't help but think about the long road ahead. This was just the beginning. The storm had only just started, and he would need all of his strength to weather it. But one thing he knew for certain. The future was his to shape, and no courtroom, no judge, and no prosecutor could take that away from him. The next morning brought a renewed sense of purpose to the courtroom. The defense had spent the night preparing their strongest weapon, and today, it was going to be unleashed. Elon sat quietly in his seat, surrounded by his legal team, knowing that this was the moment that could change the entire trajectory of the trial. He had been through countless challenges, but this one felt different. This time, it wasn't just about business. It was about his very identity, the identity of a man who had built everything he had from the ground up. Sophia, his lead attorney, rose from her chair. She had the same calm confidence that had impressed Elon from the moment they had first met. But today, there was something different in her eyes. There was fire, a quiet intensity that made him believe that she was about to deliver the breakthrough they needed. "We are ready, Your Honor," Sophia said, her voice calm but unwavering. Judge Harper nodded, signaling the court to proceed. The courtroom fell into a tense silence, the air thick with anticipation. The prosecution had laid its case. The jury had heard the accusations, and now, it was time for the defense to speak. Sophia called her first witness, a former Tesla engineer, Mark Dempsey. He was a tall man with sharp features, someone who had worked on Tesla's groundbreaking battery technology. He had left the company several years ago, but his loyalty to Elon had never wavered. He was here today to testify not just as an expert, but as someone who had seen firsthand the vision that Elon Musk had for the future. Mark stood in the witness box, adjusting his glasses as he prepared to speak. He was calm, professional, but there was an unmistakable sense of conviction in his voice. "Mr. Musk didn't just create a company. He created a movement," Mark began. "I've worked in the tech industry for years, and I've never seen anything like it. The way he approaches problems, the way he pushes boundaries, it's unlike anything I've experienced." Sophia nodded, encouraging him to continue. "Can you explain, Mr. Dempsey, what makes Elon Musk's leadership style so unique?" Mark's eyes lit up as he spoke. Elon doesn't just focus on profits. He focuses on solving problems. He's not afraid to take risks, and that's what drives innovation. Look at the Tesla Model S, the way it redefined the electric vehicle industry. It wasn't just about making a car. It was about showing the world that electric cars could be cool, powerful, and sustainable. And that's just one example. Sophia's voice was steady but powerful as she pressed on. Did Mr. Musk ever pressure anyone to manipulate the market or mislead investors? Mark shook his head, looking at the jury with a firm expression. Absolutely not. Elon has always been transparent about his goals. He's open about the risks, and he's honest about the challenges Tesla faces. He doesn't hide anything from anyone. Sophia turned to the jury. This is the core of Elon Musk's character: integrity, transparency, and a relentless pursuit of a better future. And it's why we stand here today, fighting not just for a man, but for a vision. With that, Mark's testimony came to a close. The defense's message was clear. Elon wasn't a liar or a manipulator. He was a visionary who had built his companies on honesty, integrity, and a desire to change the world. As Mark exited the witness box, Elon felt a wave of relief. But this was just the beginning. The storm was far from over, and the prosecution would be prepared to counter every argument they presented. Sophia wasn't done yet. She called her second witness, Sarah Reynolds, a former Tesla investor who had been involved with the company from the very beginning. Sarah had seen the highs and lows of Tesla's rise and fall. She knew Elon Musk better than most people, and she was willing to stand up for him today. When Sarah took the stand, she exuded confidence. She was a successful entrepreneur in her own right, and her years of experience in the investment world gave her a unique perspective on the case. Ms. Reynolds, what can you tell us about your experience investing in Tesla? Sophia asked. Sarah's voice was firm. I invested in Tesla because I believed in the company's potential. I saw the vision Elon Musk had, a vision for sustainable energy, for reducing the world's dependence on fossil fuels. I didn't invest because of some promise about stock prices or quick returns. I invested because I believed in what Tesla was trying to do. Sophia smiled. And did Mr. Musk ever mislead you about the company's future or financial situation? Sarah's answer was swift and decisive. No. Elon has always been upfront about the risks. He's never sugar-coated anything. Yes, there have been tough times. Tesla almost went bankrupt several times. But that's the reality of innovation. You can't make progress without taking risks. And Elon never hid that from us. The defense team could see the jury beginning to shift. They were starting to understand what was at stake here. This wasn't just a case about a few missteps or a few poorly worded tweets. This was about the pursuit of something much bigger, something that could change the world for the better. Sophia continued her cross-examination, asking Sarah about the numerous times Elon had put his own money on the line to keep Tesla afloat. How many times, Ms. Reynolds, did you see Mr. Musk put his personal wealth at risk to save Tesla? Sarah chuckled softly. Too many times to count. There was one point where Tesla was struggling so badly, Elon personally guaranteed the loans. He was doing everything he could to keep the company going. That's who he is. He's not in this for the money. He's in it to change the world. The jury listened intently as Sarah spoke. They could hear the sincerity in her voice, the passion she had for Tesla and Elon's vision. It wasn't about the stock prices or the market manipulation. It was about something much bigger, a future that could be brighter and cleaner for everyone. Sophia's closing argument for the day was a powerful one. She stood before the jury, looking each of them in the eye. What we've shown you today is simple, she began. Elon Musk is not a man who deceives. He is a man who dreams. And it's those dreams, those risks, those setbacks, that have brought us closer to a future that can change the world. The prosecution wants to paint him as a villain. But what we see here is a man who is fighting for the future of humanity. And that's not a crime. That's a legacy. The courtroom went silent as she finished, her words hanging in the air. Elon felt a surge of hope. They had done it. The defense had delivered a knockout punch, a masterstroke that not only countered the accusations but elevated the entire case into something far more significant. The jury had been swayed. The storm was still raging, but for the first time in days, Elon felt like he was finally on the path to winning this battle. The day after Sophia's stirring closing argument, the courtroom buzzed with an energy that hadn't been felt in days. The tension was palpable, and every member of the jury seemed to be deep in thought, processing the immense weight of the testimony they had just heard. Elon felt cautiously optimistic. The defense had made its case, and while there was still more to come, he believed that they had planted the seeds of doubt in the minds of the jury. For the first time in the trial, he allowed himself to think that maybe, just maybe, they had turned a corner. But just as things seemed to be looking up, a sudden, unexpected twist changed everything. It came in the form of an anonymous letter. Elon had been preparing for another long day of court when Sophia pulled him aside. She looked pale, her usual calm demeanor replaced by an expression of shock. "Elon, you need to see this," she said, handing him a piece of paper, the words typed in bold, stark black. The letter was brief but striking. "We know the truth, and we're about to reveal it." Elon's heart skipped a beat. He scanned the page, his pulse racing. The letter didn't specify what truth it referred to, but the implication was clear. Whoever had sent it had some kind of evidence or information that could blow the entire case wide open. "What is this?" Elon asked, his voice tight. "I don't know yet," Sophia replied, her face grim. "But it looks like someone's trying to push the trial in a completely new direction. We need to find out who sent this." The rest of the legal team gathered around, analyzing the letter. It was dated the night before, but there was no return address, no fingerprints, no clear clue as to who might have written it. It was as if someone was waiting for just the right moment to make their move. Elon's mind raced. Who could have sent this letter? And what exactly were they claiming to know? His instincts told him that this was no coincidence. Whoever was behind this had been planning it for weeks, maybe longer. And now, they were ready to unleash whatever information they had. The day's trial began as usual, but there was an air of unease that lingered. Elon's legal team kept their heads down, huddled together in the corner, exchanging glances and whispers. They knew they were on the edge of something big, but they had no idea just how big it would get. As the morning wore on, the prosecutor, Valerie Jackson, called her next witness to the stand. Someone whom Elon hadn't expected to see in the courtroom at all. It was a former Tesla employee, David Grant, someone who had left the company under controversial circumstances years ago. David was a tall man with sharp features, his eyes tired but intense. He had once been a senior executive at Tesla, responsible for overseeing many of the company's most ambitious projects. But rumors had swirled about his sudden departure. Some said it was due to internal disagreements with Elon. Others whispered that it was about financial misconduct. Whatever the reason, David's name hadn't been mentioned in the trial until now. "I'm here to speak the truth," David said, his voice steady but with an edge of bitterness. "I worked at Tesla for many years, and what I saw during my time there wasn't what the public believes." Elon's stomach tightened as David began to recount his version of events, his side of the story. According to him, there had been instances where Elon had pushed employees to meet impossible deadlines and unrealistic targets. He spoke of a toxic work culture where employees were pressured to take risks that ultimately hurt the company. But the most damaging part of his testimony was about the infamous tweet Elon had sent, the one that had caused such a stir in the market. "I saw Elon's tweet, and I knew right away it wasn't true," David continued, his voice rising with passion. He knew it wasn't true, but he sent it anyway because he wanted to boost Tesla's stock. It was reckless. And it wasn't the first time he had done something like that. The words hit Elon like a punch to the gut. How could David be saying this? It felt like a betrayal, a lie. Elon's mind raced. He had always known that David had disagreed with certain decisions at Tesla, but this accusation was something else entirely. "Did you have any direct knowledge of Mr. Musk's intentions behind the tweet?" Sophia asked, trying to maintain control of the situation. David hesitated, his eyes flickering toward Elon. "I didn't know for sure," he admitted. "But when you're in that room, when you see the pressure he's under, you know how far he'll go to keep Tesla on top. It's not about the truth, it's about the game." Sophia turned to the jury, her voice calm but filled with resolve. "Ladies and gentlemen, what you are hearing is one man's interpretation of events. We have already shown you the truth through the testimony of people who have stood by Mr. Musk and Tesla through thick and thin. This is an attempt to manipulate your perception of the facts. Don't let this testimony cloud your judgment." But the damage had been done. The jury seemed shaken, and there was no denying that David's testimony had planted seeds of doubt. Elon could see it in their eyes. His defense team might be doing their best to counter the accusations, but there was something about David's conviction that made him seem believable. It was as though his bitterness and anger had given his words an undeniable weight. Sophia immediately called for a break, and the courtroom emptied, leaving Elon alone in his thoughts. This was a game changer. It was one thing to fight accusations head-on, but it was another to have someone on the inside, someone who had worked side by side with him for years, turn against him in such a public way. Just as Elon began to process the implications of David's testimony, his phone buzzed. It was a message from Sophia. "We need to talk. I think the letter is connected to David, and I think we've only scratched the surface." Elon's stomach churned. This wasn't just a trial anymore. It was a war, and someone had just made the first move. The mood in the courtroom was heavier than ever as the day's proceedings resumed. Elon's mind raced, replaying the shocking testimony from David Grant. He could still hear the man's words echoing in his ears. It's not about the truth, it's about the game. David had planted a seed of doubt in the jury's mind, and now, Elon had to find a way to counter it, fast. Sophia pulled him aside during the break. Her face was tight, her eyes alert but filled with concern. Elon, I don't know if you're hearing it, but the jury's reacting. They're buying into David's testimony. The way he's framing it, it makes it sound like you've been manipulating things all along, that this whole vision you've sold is just a cover-up for personal gain. Elon felt his pulse quicken. But that's not the truth. I've always been upfront about the risks and the challenges. Everything I've done for Tesla, for the future. Sophia nodded, but there was an edge to her voice. I know that, but the jury doesn't, and we need to shake them out of this. We need to find out what's behind this letter before it's too late. Elon's thoughts returned to the anonymous letter, the one that had arrived just hours before David's testimony. They both knew the stakes had just gone up significantly. This wasn't just a trial anymore. It was a battle for his reputation, his life's work, and the future of his companies. Whoever sent that letter clearly had something big in mind, and it was only a matter of time before they made their next move. After the break, the defense team quickly regrouped. There was no more time to waste. Sophia called for their next witness, a former Tesla employee who had worked directly with David Grant, someone who could potentially discredit his testimony. Sarah Williams was a quiet, unassuming woman in her early 40s. She had been with Tesla for a decade, starting out in lower-level positions before working her way up. She had seen David Grant in his prime, and she knew firsthand how he had treated his colleagues, and how quickly he jumped ship when things didn't go according to his plans. Sophia's voice broke through the tense silence of the courtroom. Ms. Williams, can you tell us about your experience working with Mr. David Grant? Sarah's gaze was steady as she responded. I worked closely with David for 5 years. He was a brilliant mind, no doubt, but he had a way of making everything about himself. If things went right, he took all the credit. If they went wrong, he'd shift the blame. There was a pattern to it. He was a very ambitious man, sometimes too ambitious. Sophia leaned in, pressing for more. Can you speak to Mr. Grant's departure from Tesla? What led to that? Sarah took a deep breath before answering, as if the memory was still fresh. David left under complicated circumstances. There were internal disagreements over the direction of some projects. He was pushing for more aggressive tactics, some of which were not aligned with Elon's vision. But it wasn't just about work, it was about control. David wanted to be in charge of certain decisions, and when he wasn't, he became bitter. His departure was not amicable. The courtroom buzzed with the implications of Sarah's testimony. It painted a very different picture of David Grant than the one he had presented. To the jury, it seemed like David was disgruntled, angry, and possibly seeking revenge. His accusations no longer carried the same weight. And yet, Elon knew the damage had already been done. The seed of doubt had been planted, and it would take more than a few testimonies to wipe it away. Sophia pressed on. Ms. Williams, did you ever witness any instances where Mr. Grant sought to mislead or manipulate others within Tesla? Sarah's eyes darkened. I saw plenty of instances where David tried to cover his tracks. When things didn't go as planned, he'd shift the blame onto others. There was one incident where he tried to hide a significant production delay by creating false reports. Elon found out, of course, but David managed to make it look like he wasn't involved. Sophia turned to the jury. What we're hearing here is the testimony of someone who has an axe to grind, not a man who speaks the truth. David Grant left Tesla under a cloud of suspicion. He was not a reliable witness, and his claims against Mr. Musk are not grounded in facts. Elon felt a flicker of hope as the jury responded to Sarah's testimony. There were nods, slight shifts in posture. It wasn't much, but it was enough to remind him that not all was lost. Yet, something still gnawed at him. The letter, the ominous message that had warned him of a truth yet to be revealed. Whoever had written it clearly had more to say. As the court session wrapped up for the day, Elon and his team retreated to their strategy room. Tension hung in the air like a storm cloud, and no one was speaking, their minds racing to figure out their next move. Suddenly, Elon's phone buzzed again. It was a message from Sophia. "We've got a lead. We may know who sent the letter." His heart skipped. Could this be the breakthrough they needed? Was the shadow hanging over the case finally going to clear? Elon hurriedly typed a reply. "What's the lead?" Sophia responded almost immediately. "We traced the letter to a local print shop near David's old apartment. Someone used his name to pick it up yesterday. We think it's connected to him somehow." Elon felt a chill run down his spine. David, the man who had just testified against him, who had painted him as a manipulator and a liar, may have had a hand in the mysterious letter. Was he trying to sabotage everything? Or was he being used as a pawn in a much bigger game? "Get ready," Elon muttered to himself, his mind already racing through the implications of this new information. The game is far from over. The next morning brought an uneasy sense of anticipation to the courtroom. Elon could feel it in his bones, the calm before a storm. The day before had been a turning point, with Sarah Williams' testimony helping to chip away at David Grant's credibility. But the shadow of the anonymous letter still loomed large over the case. Elon's mind raced as he thought about the lead Sophia had uncovered. If David Grant was involved, then the stakes had just escalated to an entirely new level. Sophia had arranged for a private meeting with the investigation team early that morning to discuss their next steps. As the legal team filed into the room, Elon could see the anxiety on their faces. They were all aware that the trial was teetering on the edge. One wrong move, and everything they had worked for could crumble. "Elon, I think we're close," Sophia said, her voice low but determined. "We've confirmed that David was in that print shop yesterday, but we don't know who picked up the letter. We need to dig deeper, and fast. If David was involved, there's a bigger story here, and we need to uncover it before the prosecution does." Elon nodded, feeling a growing sense of urgency. "What's the plan?" "We're going to follow the trail," Sophia replied. "I have a few sources at the shop who are willing to cooperate. We should have more information within the hour. But we need to act quickly. If David's connected to this letter, we might have just found the key to everything." Elon couldn't help but feel a sense of unease as he left the meeting and entered the courtroom. His legal team was working behind the scenes, trying to piece together the mystery of the letter. Meanwhile, he had to focus on the task at hand, winning this trial. But the more he thought about it, the more the idea of a conspiracy began to take root in his mind. What if David Grant had been playing a much larger game? What if he was only a pawn in a plot that went beyond just undermining Elon Musk? The court proceedings began with a heavy silence as Judge Harper called the session to order. Elon sat in his usual seat, his eyes scanning the room, trying to focus on the task at hand despite the whirlwind of thoughts swirling in his mind. He couldn't shake the feeling that things were about to take another dramatic turn. As the prosecution began to make their case, it was clear that they weren't going to let David's testimony be easily forgotten. Valerie Jackson, the lead prosecutor, was pushing hard to ensure that the jury took his words to heart. "Elon Musk," Valerie began, her voice ringing with certainty, "has been playing a dangerous game for years. He's not just a tech mogul, he's a master manipulator. He used his platform to deceive investors, mislead the public, and artificially inflate the value of Tesla stock. This isn't a case about ambition, it's a case about greed." Her words hung in the air like an accusation, and Elon could see the jury leaning forward, absorbing every word she said. Despite the strong defense provided by Sophia and his team, the prosecution's message was clear. Elon had crossed the line from visionary to villain. Valerie's next move came swiftly. She called David Grant back to the stand. "Mr. Grant," she said, her voice smooth and calculated, "you've stated that Mr. Musk misled investors with his infamous tweet. But now, I'd like to ask you, why did you leave Tesla?" David took a moment before responding, his face neutral but his eyes hard. "I left Tesla because I couldn't stand by while things were being done the wrong way. I believed in the mission, at first. But as time went on, I realized it wasn't about changing the world. It was about profits, power, and manipulation. Elon Musk is a man who will stop at nothing to protect his empire, even if it means deceiving the very people who believed in him." The jury listened intently, their expressions unreadable. Elon could feel the walls closing in around him, the weight of David's words sinking in. Despite all of the evidence his defense team had presented, David's testimony had planted a seed of doubt, and now it was growing. Sophia, however, was not about to let this pass without challenge. She stood up and addressed the judge, asking for a break so she could prepare her cross-examination. When the court reconvened, Sophia was ready. "Mr. Grant," she began, her voice calm but commanding, "you've painted a picture of Mr. Musk as a manipulator, a man who only cares about power and profit. But you've admitted that you left Tesla for personal reasons, not because of any illegal activity. Isn't that right?" David shifted in his seat. "That's correct." Sophia smiled slightly. "And during your time at Tesla, did you ever personally see Mr. Musk pressure anyone to break the law or manipulate financial records?" David hesitated. "No, but that's not the point. The point is that he created a culture of fear, a culture where people were pushed to cross ethical lines." Sophia wasn't letting him off that easy. "But did you see anything that broke the law? Anything that would justify your current accusations?" David's expression shifted, and for a moment, he seemed unsure. "I didn't see anything direct. No," he muttered, his voice faltering. Sophia pressed on. "So, Mr. Grant, you're basing your entire testimony on your feelings about the company and its leadership, not on actual illegal activity. You've admitted that there were no clear violations of the law. But now, you want this jury to believe that Mr. Musk is guilty of stock manipulation and fraud based on your personal interpretation of events." The jury shifted in their seats, some of them exchanging glances. David's credibility was starting to crack under the pressure. It was clear now that his motives were less about truth and more about personal resentment and bitterness. Sophia turned to the jury, her voice unwavering. "Ladies and gentlemen, you've heard Mr. Grant's testimony, but what you haven't heard is the full story. You haven't heard about the risks Mr. Musk took to keep Tesla afloat, the personal sacrifices he made to ensure the company survived. And you certainly haven't heard about the real reasons Mr. Grant left the company, because he couldn't get his way, because he didn't like the direction Tesla was going. This is not a case about stock manipulation. This is a case about a disgruntled former employee with an axe to grind." The impact was immediate. The jury began to murmur, the tension in the room shifting. David's words no longer had the same weight, and the cracks in his story were widening. But just as the tide seemed to turn, there was a sudden, shocking interruption. A figure in the back of the courtroom stood up. It was one of Elon's former colleagues, someone he hadn't seen in years. And in that moment, Elon knew that everything was about to change. The courtroom was in an uproar when the figure at the back of the room stood up. It wasn't just the sudden movement that caused a stir, but the fact that it was someone who had once been very close to Elon Musk, someone who had worked alongside him for years at Tesla, someone whose testimony could either make or break everything. The man was Mark Lawson, a former senior engineer at Tesla who had left the company under mysterious circumstances 5 years ago. Elon's heart skipped a beat as he saw Mark walk down the aisle toward the witness stand. The last time Elon had seen him was at a company meeting, where Mark had voiced concerns over some of the company's practices. But Elon never expected him to be back here, and certainly not in the midst of a trial that was already on the brink of disaster. "Your Honor," Mark began, his voice calm but carrying an air of authority, "I have crucial information regarding the accusations against Mr. Musk. I'm here to tell the truth, not just as a former employee of Tesla, but as someone who has first-hand knowledge of the way things worked at the company." Elon's mind raced as he tried to process what Mark was doing here. If he was going to testify against him, it could be disastrous. But if he was there to clear Elon's name, it could be the breakthrough they desperately needed. Sophia stood up immediately. "Your Honor, we were not notified that this witness would be presenting testimony today. We request a brief recess to evaluate the validity of this new development." Judge Harper's eyes narrowed. "Mr. Lawson, do you have permission to speak today in the middle of proceedings?" Mark nodded. "Yes, Your Honor. I've been in contact with Mr. Musk's legal team. I believe my testimony will shed light on critical details that have been overlooked." Elon's gaze locked on Mark as he spoke. The man had always been a dedicated employee, but he had also been a bit of a wild card. Mark had left Tesla after a significant disagreement with the higher-ups, but Elon had always respected his work. They had disagreed over certain decisions, but Elon had never expected this, especially not now. "Proceed," Judge Harper said. After a moment of hesitation, Elon watched as Mark took the stand, his expression grim but resolute. The courtroom seemed to quiet down as everyone anticipated what was coming next. "Mr. Lawson, Valerie Jackson," the prosecutor began. "How long did you work at Tesla?" Mark's voice was steady as he answered. "I worked at Tesla for 7 years, from 2010 until 2018. I was one of the senior engineers overseeing the development of key components for the Model S and Model X." Valerie pressed on. "And what led to your departure from Tesla?" Mark's eyes flickered for a moment, but he didn't hesitate to answer. "I left because I disagreed with some of the direction the company was taking. Specifically, with the way Mr. Musk was running the business. I wasn't comfortable with some of the decisions he made, and I felt they were putting the company's future at risk." Elon could feel his chest tighten. This wasn't the line of questioning he had hoped for. But Mark wasn't finished. "However," Mark continued, his voice growing stronger, "I want to be clear. There was never any illegal activity. There were disagreements, yes, but there was no fraud, no manipulation of stock, and certainly no intentional harm to investors." Sophia seized on the opportunity immediately. "Mr. Lawson, you've just stated that there was no illegal activity at Tesla during your time there. Is that correct?" Mark nodded. "That's right. There were challenges, of course, but there was no malicious intent behind anything Mr. Musk did. Tesla is an ambitious company. We were always pushing the envelope. That doesn't mean we were breaking the law." Sophia smiled, sensing a shift in the tide. "And as for Mr. Musk's leadership style, you stated you disagreed with it. Can you elaborate on that? Was it just a matter of differences in opinion, or was there something more at play?" Mark's gaze was steady as he looked directly at the jury. It was about vision. Elon has always been a visionary. Sometimes that means making tough decisions, sometimes pushing the boundaries. But it's always been about moving forward, about changing the world. Yes, there were times when I thought he was too bold, too reckless. But there was never any question that his intentions were to build something bigger, not to deceive people for personal gain. The courtroom was silent for a moment as Mark's words hung in the air. It was the kind of testimony Elon had hoped for, someone who had worked alongside him, who understood the pressures and the challenges of running a company like Tesla. It wasn't about manipulation or greed. It was about ambition and the pursuit of a future that could change the world. Valerie Jackson, sensing the momentum shifting, quickly tried to regain control. "Mr. Lawson, are you saying that the concerns of Mr. Grant, the former employee who testified earlier, were unfounded?" Mark met her gaze directly. David Grant had his own agenda. He was ambitious, yes, but he was also someone who wanted to control things. He didn't always agree with Elon's direction, and when things didn't go his way, he became bitter. The accusations against Elon are based on his personal feelings, not on facts. The jury seemed to respond positively to Mark's testimony. Elon could see it in their eyes. This wasn't just another disgruntled employee with an axe to grind. This was someone who had been there, who had seen the challenges and had walked away on his own terms, without resorting to smear campaigns or false accusations. Sophia wrapped up her cross-examination. "Thank you, Mr. Lawson. You've provided valuable insight into the culture at Tesla, and I think it's clear to the jury that there is no malicious intent behind Mr. Musk's actions. If anything, Elon Musk's leadership was driven by an unwavering belief in the future." As Mark stepped down from the stand, the courtroom seemed to breathe a collective sigh of relief. Elon felt a weight lift from his shoulders. Mark's testimony had been a game-changer. The tide had turned, and for the first time in days, Elon felt that the case might actually be in his favor. But just as hope began to settle in, Sophia's phone buzzed. She glanced at the message and then met Elon's eyes. "It's the investigation team," she said quietly. "They found something. Something big." Elon's stomach dropped. What now? Was there another twist in this already tumultuous trial? The tension in the courtroom was palpable as Elon's legal team gathered in their strategy room, a place that had become all too familiar over the past few days. Sophia stood by the door, holding her phone, her face grim. The rest of the team was seated around the table, all eyes fixed on her, waiting for an update. What did they find? Elon asked, his voice tight with anticipation. He felt like he was on the edge of something, but he couldn't quite make out what. Sophia held up her phone and showed Elon the message. The print shop. It wasn't just David who picked up that letter. It was someone much closer to the case. Someone with direct access to the courtroom. The person who picked up the letter is a key figure on the prosecution's team. Elon's breath caught in his chest. You're saying someone from the other side is involved in this? Sophia nodded. Yes. It seems like someone within the prosecution's office was behind the letter. We're still confirming all the details, but it looks like this is a deliberate attempt to throw the case off course. Elon leaned back, his mind racing. The letter had been a warning that someone was pulling strings behind the scenes, someone who had a vested interest in seeing him fail. But why? Who would go to such lengths to manipulate the trial? Before he could voice his thoughts, the door to the strategy room opened, and Detective Thomas, one of the investigators working on the case, stepped inside. He had a folder in his hand, and his face was a mix of resolve and concern. Mr. Musk, Detective Thomas said, his voice steady but low. We've been digging into the connection between the prosecution and the letter. We've found something disturbing. Elon straightened. What did you find? Thomas placed the folder on the table and opened it. Inside were printouts of emails, documents, and phone records. Elon's eyes scanned the information quickly, piecing together the puzzle. The emails were between David Grant and someone named Claire Williams, a senior prosecutor on Valerie Jackson's team. Elon, Thomas said, pointing to one email in particular. This email was sent just days before the letter was delivered. In it, David Grant makes it clear that he's willing to do anything to see this case succeed. But what's more alarming is that Claire Williams was in constant communication with him. She knew about the letter, and she was actively coordinating with him. Elon felt a chill run through his veins. The realization hit him hard. The person who had been orchestrating the chaos wasn't just a disgruntled ex-employee. It was a well-connected figure within the legal system. Someone with access to the courtroom and the case's details. Someone who knew exactly how to manipulate things to their advantage. Sophia's eyes narrowed as she flipped through the documents. This doesn't just change everything. It exposes a conspiracy. They've been working together from the start. Elon's mind raced. If Claire Williams was involved, it meant that the entire prosecution's case had been tainted. They weren't just going after him. They were actively trying to destroy his reputation by any means necessary. This is a game changer, Elon muttered. If we can expose this connection, it could unravel everything. Sophia nodded. We need to bring this to the judge, immediately. The jury deserves to know that the prosecution has been compromised. As the team worked through their next steps, Elon couldn't shake the feeling that they were on the verge of a major breakthrough. But there was still one question that gnawed at him. What was Claire Williams' motive? Why would a prosecutor, someone sworn to uphold the law, be involved in a scheme like this? Before he could ponder further, Sophia's phone buzzed again. She glanced at the screen, then met Elon's gaze. It's Claire Williams, she said quietly. She's requested an emergency meeting with the judge. She's asking for something big, a change in the trial's course. Something that could alter the entire outcome. Elon's stomach turned. This was it. The final move in a game that had taken twists and turns no one could have anticipated. If Claire Williams was asking for a change in the trial's course, it could only mean one thing. She was going to try to bury the evidence that had come to light. We need to stop her, Elon said, his voice urgent. We need to get ahead of her before she can make her move. The legal team jumped into action. They called their contacts, set up meetings, and prepared to take this new information to Judge Harper. This wasn't just about defending Elon's reputation anymore. It was about uncovering a deep conspiracy that could have far-reaching consequences. As the clock ticked down, the atmosphere in the courtroom was growing increasingly tense. The prosecution had just finished presenting its case for the day, and Valerie Jackson was speaking to the jury about the so-called evidence they had gathered. Elon was waiting for the right moment, waiting for the signal from Sophia to make their move. When the door to the courtroom opened, and the bailiff called for everyone to take their seats, Elon knew it was time. He looked at his team, who were all in position, ready to strike when the moment came. Judge Harper took her seat at the bench, her eyes scanning the room. "We're about to begin the final arguments," she said. "I hope both sides have their cases in order. This trial is nearing its conclusion." Sophia stood up, her voice cutting through the murmur in the courtroom. "Your Honor, before we proceed with the closing arguments, we have evidence that could significantly alter the course of this trial." The room fell silent. Valerie Jackson shot Sophia a sharp look, but Sophia remained unshaken. "This evidence," Sophia continued, "relates to an attempt to undermine the fairness of these proceedings. We've uncovered communication between a member of the prosecution's team, Ms. Claire Williams, and David Grant, the former employee who testified against Mr. Musk. These communications suggest collusion, and we believe it's crucial that the jury is made aware of this." There was a stunned silence in the room. The jury exchanged confused looks. Even Valerie seemed caught off guard. Judge Harper's eyes narrowed. "What are you implying, Ms. Carter?" Sophia stepped forward, her voice steady but forceful. "I'm implying that this trial has been tainted, Your Honor, that there has been interference, and that the integrity of the case has been compromised. We ask that you allow us to present this new evidence." The courtroom buzzed with whispers. Elon watched as Valerie's face went pale. She had been blindsided. Claire Williams was the key to everything. And now, the truth was about to come crashing down. The air in the courtroom was thick with tension. The revelation that Claire Williams, a senior prosecutor, had been in communication with David Grant, the disgruntled former Tesla employee, left everyone stunned. Even Judge Harper, known for her calm demeanor, appeared visibly shaken by the new information. It was a seismic shift in the trial, and Elon could feel the weight of it pressing down on him. Sophia's declaration had left the courtroom in an uproar. Valerie Jackson, the lead prosecutor, was the first to recover, but not without visible signs of irritation. Her face flushed red as she stood up, attempting to regain control of the situation. "This is preposterous," Valerie snapped. "There is no evidence of any wrongdoing on the part of Ms. Williams. This is a baseless accusation designed to distract from the real issues at hand." Sophia was unfazed. "The evidence speaks for itself, Ms. Jackson. We have emails, phone records, and testimonies that directly link Claire Williams to David Grant's manipulation of the case. You can try to discredit it, but the truth is out in the open now." Elon could see the storm brewing on Valerie's face. She knew they had her cornered, and she would fight tooth and nail to protect her case. But the momentum had shifted. The accusations against Claire were explosive, and there was no way the court could ignore them. Judge Harper, after a long pause, looked over at the prosecution. "Ms. Jackson, I'll allow this evidence to be presented. You will have the opportunity to respond. But I expect this trial to proceed with the utmost integrity. Any attempts to undermine the process will not be tolerated." Elon could feel his pulse quicken. This was it, the moment that could break the case wide open. If they could prove the conspiracy between Claire Williams and David Grant, it would be the final nail in the coffin for the prosecution's case. The courtroom was quiet as Sophia stood tall, her voice steady. "Your Honor, we request that you allow us to submit all the communication records, emails, and phone logs between Claire Williams and David Grant as part of the evidence. This is the key to understanding the true motivations behind the accusations against Mr. Musk." With a nod from Judge Harper, Sophia moved forward, handing over the evidence. The court clerk took the documents and began to process them, the room holding its breath as the proceedings paused for the moment. Valerie Jackson was now visibly tense. She stood up, attempting to argue against the submission, but her words fell flat. "This is irrelevant. These documents have no bearing on the matter at hand. The focus should remain on the financial fraud that Mr. Musk has committed." Sophia wasn't having it. "It is absolutely relevant. These communications prove that the prosecution has been compromised from the start. We're talking about the integrity of the entire case here. If there's collusion at the highest levels, then everything we've heard so far is tainted." Judge Harper gave a sharp nod. "I'll have to review this evidence and make a determination. We will reconvene tomorrow morning." As the judge banged the gavel to adjourn, the room was filled with whispers and murmurs. Elon stood up slowly, his heart still pounding in his chest. The world had shifted in that moment. If the evidence was allowed in, the trial would no longer be about his actions. It would be about the corruption within the very system that was meant to hold him accountable. "Sophia, Ever the calm strategist, turned to Elon. We've done it. This is a game changer. Elon wasn't so sure. I hope you're right. But there's still so much we don't know about Claire's involvement. What's her endgame? Why would she do this? Sophia's expression softened. I don't know yet, but we're getting closer to understanding her motivations. Just hold tight. The following morning brought with it a tense atmosphere. When the court reconvened, everyone was eager to see how Judge Harper would respond to the new evidence. Elon could feel his nerves tightening as he sat in the courtroom, waiting for the moment of truth. Judge Harper wasted no time in addressing the situation. I've reviewed the evidence submitted by the defense. The communications between Ms. Williams and Mr. Grant raise serious questions about the integrity of this case. Therefore, I am granting the defense permission to present this evidence to the jury. A wave of disbelief rippled through the courtroom. Valerie Jackson's face was pale, her jaw clenched in frustration. She knew that this evidence could unravel everything. But it was too late now. The cat was out of the bag. Sophia rose to present the new evidence. Ladies and gentlemen of the jury, what we have here is clear proof of collusion between David Grant and a senior member of the prosecution's team, Claire Williams. These communications show that they were working together to undermine Mr. Musk's defense and manipulate the narrative of this case. I will now walk you through these records so you can see for yourselves. Elon watched as the jury leaned forward, their attention rapt as Sophia detailed the conversations and emails between Claire and David. The prosecution had tried to spin a story of Elon's greed and manipulation, but now the focus was shifting entirely. The credibility of the case was crumbling, piece by piece. One email in particular caught everyone's attention. In it, Claire Williams instructed David Grant to discredit Musk's reputation at all costs and make sure the jury sees him as the villain. It was clear now that the prosecution's case was not built on facts. It was built on a personal vendetta, fueled by a desire to destroy Elon Musk, no matter the cost. Valerie Jackson stood up, shaking her head. This is absurd. These are nothing more than private conversations. There's no evidence of illegal activity here. This is just an attempt to smear the prosecution. But Sophia wasn't finished. Ms. Jackson, these emails and phone records speak volumes. They demonstrate a coordinated effort to influence the outcome of this trial. And that is a direct violation of the law. The very people who are supposed to uphold justice are the ones conspiring to deny it. Elon felt a sense of vindication wash over him. He had known all along that there was something behind the curtain, some hidden hand trying to manipulate the trial. But now, with this evidence in the open, the truth was undeniable. Judge Harper looked from the defense to the prosecution. Ms. Jackson, unless you can provide an explanation for these communications, I must say that the integrity of your case is now in question. Valerie's face hardened, but she didn't respond. She knew there was no way out. The foundation of her case had crumbled beneath her. The jury was silent, processing what they had just heard. The prosecution's case, once airtight, was now in tatters. The tension in the courtroom was palpable as Judge Harper adjourned for a brief recess to allow the jury to deliberate. Elon sat back in his chair, his heart still racing. He couldn't help but wonder. Was this the moment that would change everything for him? Or was there more to the story that hadn't yet come to light? Hit subscribe and leave a comment with where you're watching from. This story might just spark a new beginning. What's one thing that always pushes you forward, even when things get tough? The brief recess felt like an eternity. Elon sat in his chair, his hands clasped tightly in front of him, his mind whirling with everything that had just transpired. The jury had heard the evidence, undeniable proof of collusion between Claire Williams and David Grant. But the case was far from over. There was still the matter of what would happen once the jury began deliberating. Could they be swayed by the personal vendetta, or would they see through the prosecution's web of lies? Sophia, standing by his side, was the only one who seemed unaffected by the tension. She spoke in a low, steady voice, giving him a sense of calm in the storm. This is our chance, Elon. We've turned the tide. The jury is listening, and they've seen the truth. But we can't stop now. We have to finish strong. Elon nodded, still processing everything. I just don't understand. What was Claire's endgame? Why go this far? Sophia gave him a pointed look. That's what we need to figure out. This isn't just about the case, it's about power. Claire's involvement in this trial was a way for her to gain control, to push her own agenda. If we can expose her full motive, it'll tie everything together. But we have to be careful. She'll stop at nothing to protect herself. Elon's gaze drifted to the courtroom door, where the jury was still behind closed doors, deliberating. He had seen how quickly things could change, how one small revelation could turn the tide of a trial. But he was still haunted by the question: how deep did this conspiracy go? Was Claire Williams just a pawn in a much larger game? Just then, the door to the courtroom swung open, and the foreperson of the jury stepped forward, signaling that they were ready to return. Elon's heart skipped a beat. The moment of truth was upon him. As the jury filed back into the courtroom, the tension was suffocating. Every eye in the room was on them as they took their seats. Judge Harper cleared her throat and motioned for the foreperson to speak. "Your Honor, we have reached a verdict," the foreperson said, his voice steady but laced with the gravity of the situation. He held the folded paper with the verdict, and Elon felt his stomach tighten with anticipation. Judge Harper gestured for him to proceed. "Please, read the verdict." The foreperson glanced at the paper one last time, then stood. "We, the jury, find the defendant, Elon Musk, not guilty of all charges." The words hung in the air, and for a moment, the room was still. Elon's mind was numb as he processed what he had just heard. Not guilty. It was over. He had won. But the room was not filled with celebration. Instead, there was a deep silence, as everyone seemed to absorb the gravity of the trial's outcome. Elon felt a mixture of relief and disbelief wash over him. After everything, the accusations, the lies, the manipulation, it had all led to this moment. Sophia turned to him with a smile. "You did it. You're free." But Elon couldn't fully absorb the victory. Something didn't feel right. The case had been a fight, not just against the legal system, but against forces much more powerful and shadowy than he had ever imagined. He had been cleared of the charges, yes, but what about Claire? What about the corruption within the system that had allowed this to happen in the first place? Judge Harper looked at both parties with a stern expression. "While the jury's decision is final, I am ordering an immediate investigation into the communications between the prosecution team and David Grant. If any further wrongdoing is uncovered, appropriate action will be taken." Elon couldn't help but nod. This wasn't just about him anymore. It was about the larger issues at play. The trial had been a window into a system rife with corruption, and he knew that he wouldn't be able to walk away from it without exposing the full extent of what had transpired. As the judge adjourned the court and the room began to empty out, Elon felt a hand on his shoulder. It was Mark Lawson, the former Tesla engineer who had turned the tide with his testimony. "You did it, Elon," Mark said quietly, his voice full of admiration. "I know we had our differences in the past, but I'm proud of you. You fought back when it seemed like there was no way out." Elon nodded, feeling a deep sense of gratitude. "Thanks, Mark. I never could have done this without you." Mark smiled. "You had to fight for the truth, and in the end, that's what won." But even as the weight of the victory began to settle in, Elon couldn't shake the feeling that this was just the beginning. The investigation into Claire Williams and the prosecution's corruption was only the first step. There was still a long road ahead, and he knew that the forces that had tried to take him down weren't going to give up easily. As Elon walked out of the courthouse, flanked by his legal team, he was greeted by a crowd of reporters, their cameras flashing and microphones thrusting forward in a sea of questions. "Elon, how do you feel about the verdict?" one reporter shouted. Elon paused, his eyes scanning the crowd. He could see the weight of the world reflected in their faces, the same faces that had watched him climb, fall, and rise again. He took a deep breath and stepped forward, his voice steady and calm. "The truth always comes out in the end," he said, his words carrying far beyond the reporters in front of him. "But this isn't over. There are bigger issues at play here. Issues of justice, fairness, and the corruption within the very system that was supposed to protect us. I will continue to fight, not just for myself, but for everyone who has ever been wronged." The reporters clamored for more, but Elon had said all he needed to say. As he walked away, he knew that this victory, while important, was just one chapter in a much larger story. And in the days that followed, the investigation into Claire Williams and the connections between the prosecution and David Grant would only deepen, uncovering layers of corruption that went far beyond anything Elon could have imagined. The battle was far from over. But for the first time in a long while, Elon Musk felt like he was on the right side of history. Elon didn't expect the relief to last long. The courtroom victory had been sweet, no doubt, but as he stood outside the courthouse that day, the weight of the future hung over him like a storm cloud. The press was buzzing with excitement, snapping pictures and shouting questions, but it was all noise to him. What mattered now was what happened next, the battle behind the scenes, the fight for justice, and exposing the truth about Claire Williams and the corruption in the system. Elon had learned over the years that his greatest victories often came with the heaviest costs. This trial had been no different. He had beaten the charges, but the system that had sought to destroy him was still there, lurking, ready to strike again. As he made his way through the crowd, Sophia caught up with him, her expression unreadable. "You did it, Elon. We all did. But we're not finished yet." Elon turned to face her, his brow furrowed. "I know. The victory feels hollow until we expose what's really going on. We need to make sure Claire and anyone else behind this is held accountable." Sophia nodded. "We'll keep pushing. The investigation into the prosecution team is just beginning, and the media will help amplify the story. It's time to go public with everything we know." Elon paused, looking out over the throngs of people who had gathered outside the courthouse. "It's bigger than that. We have to go after the root of the problem. If the system is corrupt, it's not just about clearing my name. It's about exposing the rot and changing the way things work." Sophia gave him a small smile. "One step at a time. But first, we need to make sure Claire and the others don't escape. I've already sent the files to the authorities. They'll start an official investigation, and we'll have our answers soon." Inside the courthouse, Valerie Jackson was far from giving up. While the jury deliberated, she had retreated to her office, her mind spinning with the consequences of the trial's outcome. Elon had won. But how? How had they managed to uncover the link between Claire Williams and David Grant? This wasn't just a simple defeat. It was a challenge to her entire career. Valerie had trusted Claire. She had believed that her prosecutor was above reproach, that she was an asset to the team. But now, as she looked over the damning evidence, Valerie realized that she had been played. She had been used as a pawn in a much larger scheme, and the reality of the situation was sinking in. She had to make a decision. Did she continue to protect Claire Williams, the woman whose ambitions had ultimately cost her everything? Or did she step back, distance herself from the disaster, and protect her career? The thought of her entire career collapsing around her was too much to bear. Meanwhile, in a secure government office miles away, Claire Williams was staring at the computer screen, her hands shaking. The email had come through moments earlier, from an anonymous source. The words were simple but powerful. "They've uncovered everything. You're exposed." For months, Claire had worked tirelessly to keep her involvement under wraps. She had manipulated evidence, coordinated with David Grant, and twisted the narrative to ensure that Elon Musk would be convicted. But now, the truth was out, and there was no way to cover it up. Her phone buzzed with an incoming message, this time from someone she hadn't expected to hear from. It was from David Grant. "Claire," the message read, "they know everything. We're both in trouble now. You need to get out. This isn't going to end well for us." Claire's heart skipped a beat. She had tried to distance herself from David after the case began to turn against her, but now, she realized that there was no escaping the consequences of their actions. The authorities were closing in, and if she didn't act quickly, she could be facing serious charges. Charges that would ruin her career, her reputation, and her life. As the minutes ticked by, Claire's mind raced. She could run. She could disappear, hide somewhere where no one would find her. But there was one thing she hadn't accounted for, the investigation into the prosecution team. And with Elon Musk's legal team digging deeper into the connections, there was no way she could avoid the inevitable. But Claire had always been a survivor. She wasn't going down without a fight. Back in Elon's world, the days following the trial were filled with a whirlwind of media coverage, press conferences, and the start of the official investigation. As Sophia had promised, The authorities were moving quickly to examine the communications between Claire Williams and David Grant, as well as the role Valerie Jackson had played in the entire scheme. The spotlight was now on them. Elon had spent hours preparing for interviews, giving statements, and answering questions. It was exhausting, but it was also necessary. He couldn't allow the public narrative to be hijacked by those who wanted to downplay the gravity of what had occurred. This wasn't just a legal victory for him. It was a victory for the truth, for transparency, and for the future of the justice system. Sophia, meanwhile, had been in constant contact with law enforcement officials, making sure that everything was being handled appropriately. She knew that the investigation into Claire and the prosecution team would take time, but she was confident that the truth would eventually come out. "Are you ready for the next step?" Sophia asked him one afternoon, as they sat in his office, watching the latest developments on the news. Elon took a deep breath. "I'm ready, but this is just the beginning. We need to expose the system for what it is." This trial was just one example of how broken it all is. Sophia nodded, her eyes focused. "That's the right mindset. But be prepared. It's going to get messy before it gets better. People don't like to admit when they've been wrong, especially when the truth is this ugly." Elon gave her a wry smile. "I've never been afraid of a little mess." In the weeks that followed, the investigation into Claire Williams and her connections to David Grant deepened. The authorities uncovered more and more damning evidence, including encrypted messages, financial transactions, and documents that linked Claire to several high-level figures who had been involved in pushing the charges against Elon Musk. As the investigation snowballed, so did the public's awareness of the corruption within the legal system. It wasn't just about Claire anymore. It was about exposing the corruption that ran deep through the system, threatening to undermine the very foundation of justice. With each new revelation, Elon's voice grew stronger. He spoke out against the corruption, calling for reforms and accountability in the legal system. He knew it wouldn't be easy, but if anyone could lead the charge, it was him. The battle he had fought in the courtroom was nothing compared to the battle that lay ahead. But as the tide began to turn, a shadow loomed on the horizon. Claire Williams was still out there, on the run, hiding from the law and preparing for her final move. Elon had won the battle, but the war was far from over. Elon could feel the storm brewing on the horizon. As the days passed, the pressure mounted not only from the public, but also from the authorities who were now hot on Claire Williams' trail. She had vanished after the evidence had come to light, disappearing without a trace. Elon knew that the worst was yet to come. The corruption within the justice system was like a tangled web, and Claire was at the center of it all. Sophia sat across from him, her brow furrowed as she reviewed the latest updates from law enforcement. "They're closing in on her, Elon. Every day, the walls are getting smaller. The investigation into her ties with the prosecution and David Grant is expanding. But she's good at hiding." Elon nodded, his thoughts racing. "She's always been good at playing the game. She won't go down easily, and she won't take the fall alone. I'm worried about what she might do next." Sophia leaned forward, locking eyes with him. "That's exactly why we need to stay ahead of her. We can't wait for the authorities to catch up. We have to uncover the rest of her connections before she has the chance to destroy the evidence." Elon stared out the window of his office, watching the sun dip below the horizon. There was a quiet intensity in the air, the kind of silence that preceded a battle. He knew that the stakes had only grown higher. His name had been cleared in the courtroom, but the fight for justice was far from over. Claire Williams had a lot of secrets, and Elon was determined to uncover them all. In the days that followed, the investigation into Claire Williams reached a fever pitch. Authorities tracked her digital footprint, searching for any clue that might lead them to her. Intercepted messages and documents painted a clearer picture of her role in the scheme. But as the pressure mounted, Claire was becoming more desperate. She knew that she couldn't outrun the law forever. But there was one thing she could do. She could destroy everything. As Elon's legal team worked tirelessly to unravel her web of deceit, Claire was already making her move. Late one night, a breaking news alert flashed across Elon's screen. It was a story that sent chills down his spine. Breaking. Senior prosecutor Claire Williams reportedly on the run, missing amid investigations into corruption scheme. Elon read the article with growing concern. Claire had vanished without a trace. The authorities had tracked her to a remote location, but she had somehow slipped through their grasp. There was no telling where she was now, or what she was planning. "We knew this was coming," Sophia said, standing beside him. "She's desperate, and when people get desperate, they'll do anything to protect themselves. We need to prepare for the worst." Elon didn't speak right away. His mind was racing. Claire's disappearance was a game changer. It meant she was about to make a move, and whatever it was, it wouldn't be good. Meanwhile, deep in the shadows, Claire Williams was preparing for the final chapter of her escape. She had spent weeks hiding in plain sight, using every resource at her disposal to stay ahead of the authorities. But now, with the net closing in, she knew it was only a matter of time before her world came crashing down. Her mind was focused, calculating every move. She had orchestrated the entire scheme, manipulating evidence, controlling the narrative, and using her connections to create a perfect storm for Elon Musk. But she hadn't anticipated the fight back from him, from Sophia, and from the relentless pursuit of the truth. Now, she was going to destroy it all. Claire had one last ace up her sleeve, a final piece of evidence, one that could take down Elon Musk once and for all. It was a dangerous game, but Claire had always been willing to risk everything. She was going to play her final card, and this time, no one would stand in her way. Elon and Sophia were on high alert. They knew Claire was capable of anything, and now that she was on the run, her unpredictability made her more dangerous than ever. "I don't trust her to stay quiet," Sophia said, her voice tight with concern. "She's not going to let this go. If she has that final piece of evidence, she'll use it against you." Elon nodded, his expression darkening. "I know. We need to find her before she makes her move. We can't let her control the narrative any longer. If we don't catch her, this whole thing could be turned around again." The pressure was mounting. Elon knew that Claire was out there, planning her next steps, but he had no idea what she was capable of now. The woman who had once been his greatest adversary was now a rogue element in a game he couldn't predict. "I'll contact my sources," Sophia said, pulling out her phone. "We've got eyes on every lead, every possible safe house she could be hiding in. She won't get away for much longer." But as the investigation intensified, something unexpected happened. A tip came through. It was an anonymous message sent to Elon's legal team. The message contained a cryptic address, a location that could lead them directly to Claire. Elon's heart raced as he read the message. This could be it. This is the break we've been waiting for. Sophia didn't hesitate. "We're going after her. Right now." The location led them to an abandoned warehouse on the outskirts of the city, an area that had long been forgotten by most. As they approached the building, Elon's thoughts were a whirlwind. What had Claire been planning here? Was she going to make her final stand? Or had she hidden something even more dangerous than they imagined? The team moved quickly, covering all angles. Sophia led the charge, her focus laser-sharp. Elon stayed close behind, knowing that the truth was within reach. They entered the warehouse cautiously, the air thick with dust and the weight of their mission. Every step felt like it brought them closer to the edge of a precipice. The silence was deafening as they moved deeper into the building, scanning every corner, every room. And then, they found it. In the center of the warehouse was a small table, covered with documents and a laptop. The files contained detailed plans, financial records, and conversations that could tear down everything Elon had worked for. But there was something else, a final piece of evidence, one that could implicate Elon in ways they hadn't anticipated. Sophia quickly grabbed the laptop and began reviewing the contents. Her face went pale as she scrolled through the documents. "Elon," she said, her voice tight. "This is it. This is what she's been hiding." Elon's breath caught in his throat. "What is it?" Sophia hesitated for a moment before speaking. "It's a falsified contract. One that makes it look like you personally approved illegal activity related to Tesla's financial dealings. If this gets out, it's game over." The final blow. Claire had played her hand, and now Elon was facing the consequences of it. Everything he had worked for, the truth, his company, his reputation, was hanging by a thread. Sophia looked up at him, determination in her eyes. "We have to expose this for what it is. We can't let her win." Elon took a deep breath. "We'll do whatever it takes. This ends now. The documents on the laptop weighed heavily on Elon as he stared at the screen. The falsified contract was undeniable, at least at first glance. It was designed to make it appear as though he had personally signed off on financial activities that, if exposed, would have grave legal and financial consequences for Tesla and SpaceX. Claire had crafted this piece of evidence with meticulous precision, knowing full well how devastating it could be. Elon's mind raced. He had spent years building these companies from the ground up, pouring everything he had into them, and now, one document could bring it all crumbling down. If the wrong people saw this, if the wrong narrative spread, he could lose everything. His empire, his reputation, his legacy. Sophia stood next to him, her face a mask of determination. We can't just sit on this, Elon. We need to act fast. If we let this go public, it could completely destroy your credibility. We need to get ahead of this. Elon nodded slowly, his fingers gripping the edge of the table. If this gets out, they'll have all the ammunition they need. It'll be a media firestorm, and no one will care about the truth. They'll focus on the narrative that Claire's set up. Sophia met his gaze. We expose the truth. All of it. We have the evidence to show that this contract is forged, created by Claire herself. But we have to move quickly. Claire is a master at manipulating the media. If we don't act now, she'll make sure the lie spreads like wildfire. Elon knew she was right. The truth was on their side, but it didn't matter if they couldn't prove it. Claire had already orchestrated enough chaos that people would believe whatever story she spun. We need to find her, Elon said, his voice firm. Once we expose this, there's no turning back. The next few hours were a blur of activity. Elon's legal team worked around the clock, validating the contract and gathering additional evidence to disprove Claire's manipulation. Sophia coordinated with law enforcement, making sure they were ready to move the moment they found Claire. Elon spent most of his time in his office, pacing as he reviewed the documents and planned his next steps. He knew that the battle was far from over. Even if they could expose Claire for the fraud she was, the damage she had done was already done. She had made sure to plant enough doubt, enough confusion, to make people question everything. Elon, Sophia called from the doorway, we've got a lead. A source inside one of her old contacts is willing to meet with us. It could give us the last piece we need. Elon stood up instantly. Where? The old warehouse. The one we found the laptop in, Sophia replied. They've confirmed Claire was there just hours ago. Elon's heart quickened. Claire was on the move again, and she wasn't stopping until she'd executed her final plan. They couldn't afford to let her slip away. The warehouse was as dark and desolate as before. The atmosphere was tense as Elon and Sophia led the charge through the darkened halls, their footsteps echoing off the walls. They had the authorities on standby, but this was a mission for them to handle personally. If Claire was here, they needed to confront her face to face. When they reached the area where the tip had pointed them, they found something unexpected. The place was eerily quiet. No sign of Claire. But something else caught Elon's eye. A small, black briefcase resting on a table, surrounded by neatly stacked files. The same briefcase that Claire had used to carry the documents that implicated him. Sophia moved toward the case and opened it slowly, her fingers trembling. This is all of it. The evidence she's been hiding. Elon scanned the room, a deep sense of dread creeping up on him. She's not here, but she's been here recently. We're close. Just as the words left his mouth, a loud click echoed through the space. A figure emerged from the shadows, Claire Williams. Elon, she said, her voice cold and calculating, I knew you'd come looking for me, but you're too late. This game is over. Sophia stepped forward, her eyes blazing with fury. You've ruined lives, Claire. You've manipulated the truth, and now you're going to pay for it. Claire's lips curled into a twisted smile. You think you've won? You think the truth will save you? Look around, Elon. You have no idea what's really going on. I've been playing a much bigger game, and you're just a pawn. This is far from over. Elon took a step forward, narrowing his eyes. You were willing to destroy everything, to ruin lives, just for power. But the truth is coming, Claire. You can't hide from it forever. Claire's smile faltered for a brief moment, before she steadied herself. The truth? You think people care about the truth anymore? They care about what they see, what they hear. I've already planted the seeds, Elon. You'll never be able to erase them. Elon felt a rush of clarity. It wasn't about exposing Claire. It was about proving that she had manipulated the entire situation. She had forged evidence. She had twisted the truth. She had tried to bring him down. But now, he had everything he needed to turn the tables. I don't need to erase anything, Claire, Elon said, his voice steady. I just need to show everyone who you really are. With the authorities closing in, the confrontation was coming to an end. Claire's smug demeanor started to crack as she realized the walls were closing in. The fake contract, the forged documents, the manipulation, all of it was about to be exposed for the world to see. Sophia, standing close by, activated her phone. We've got it all. The truth is going public, Claire. The media, the authorities, they won't ignore it this time. Claire's expression darkened, but she knew it was too late. Her time was up. You won't win this, Elon, Claire spat, her eyes burning with hatred. I'm always 2 steps ahead. Elon stepped forward, his voice low but filled with conviction. Not anymore, Claire. You've played your last card. And now, it's time for you to face the consequences. As Claire was taken away by law enforcement, Elon stood in the warehouse, the weight of the situation finally sinking in. The victory had come at a heavy cost. His reputation had been on the line. His companies had been jeopardized. But in the end, the truth had triumphed. Sophia walked up to him, her face a mixture of relief and exhaustion. It's over. She's done. Elon nodded, his gaze distant. For now. But this won't be the last time we have to fight. The system is broken, and there are more like her out there. We need to keep pushing for change. Sophia smiled faintly. We will. But for today, let's call it a win. Elon looked out at the horizon, knowing that the battle was far from over. But this victory, the one that had come from sheer determination and a relentless pursuit of the truth, was the one that mattered most. The following weeks were a whirlwind. Elon Musk had just survived what could have been the most devastating scandal of his career. Claire Williams had been exposed for what she truly was, nothing more than a fraud, a liar, and a master manipulator. The evidence was irrefutable. The media storm that had once threatened to destroy him was now just a distant memory, replaced by a new wave of public support. The truth had prevailed, and Elon had emerged victorious. But victory, as he had come to realize, wasn't always as sweet as it seemed. The aftermath of the battle had left a deep mark on him. The months of uncertainty, the threats to his legacy, and the people who had betrayed him, all of it weighed heavily on his mind. There were still many obstacles ahead, and the road to recovery wasn't going to be easy. As he sat in his office at Tesla headquarters, Elon couldn't help but feel the immense pressure that still loomed over him. There were questions to answer, reputations to rebuild, and a company to lead. He had spent so much time fighting for his name, his reputation, and his future that he had neglected the core of what truly mattered. The people he worked with and the mission they were all working toward. Sophia sat across from him, her expression serious but calm. You've been quiet lately, she said, her voice soft but insistent. We've won, Elon. It's time to focus on what's next. Elon ran a hand through his hair, staring out the window as the sun set over the city. It's not that simple. I spent so much time fighting for my name that I almost forgot why I started all of this in the first place. Sophia nodded, understanding. You've always been about the future, innovation, the big ideas. You can't let this fight define you. You've already proven who you are. Now it's time to refocus on the work that matters. Elon's eyes hardened with resolve. You're right. There's still so much to be done. SpaceX, Tesla, they both have the potential to change the world. And I'm not about to let anything, or anyone, derail that. Sophia leaned forward, her eyes meeting his. Exactly. We've got a lot of work ahead of us. But you don't have to do it alone. The people who matter are with you. We've got your back. For the first time in weeks, Elon allowed himself to smile. It was a small gesture, but it was enough to remind him of the one thing that had never wavered throughout all the chaos. His drive, his vision, and the people who supported him. The next few months were a blur of meetings, strategy sessions, and press conferences. Elon was more focused than ever on his goals, his companies, and the future of humanity. He knew that the battle against corruption was far from over. There would always be people like Claire trying to manipulate and destroy everything he had worked for. But he had learned a valuable lesson. The truth was more powerful than any lie, and the pursuit of justice was always worth the fight. SpaceX made significant strides in their mission to colonize Mars. New innovations in rocket technology brought them closer to their ultimate goal, and the world began to take notice. Tesla, too, continued to lead the charge in sustainable energy, with new developments in battery technology and electric vehicles pushing the boundaries of what was possible. Elon had always been a visionary, but now he had a renewed sense of purpose. The challenges he had faced had only strengthened his resolve. The road to rebuilding his empire was not without its difficulties, but he knew that the fight for the future was just beginning. One day, as Elon walked through the Tesla production line, he was greeted by the familiar faces of the engineers and workers who made the magic happen. He stopped to talk with a few of them, asking about their projects and how they were progressing. It was these moments, he realized, that truly mattered. It wasn't the headlines, the courtroom battles, or the media frenzy that defined him. It was the work, the incredible, world-changing work that his team was doing every day. Sophia met him near the production floor, her smile warm. "How are you feeling about everything?" Elon glanced around at the team, who were hard at work, putting their energy and passion into each task. "Better. Stronger. I'm more focused than ever on what comes next." Sophia raised an eyebrow. "You're still going after the big goals, huh? Mars, sustainable energy?" "Elon Musk doesn't back down," he said with a grin, his eyes alight with the fire that had driven him from the very beginning. "And neither does Tesla. We've got the chance to change the world, and I'm not stopping until we do." Sophia smiled. "You never do." In the months that followed, the world began to see a different side of Elon Musk. The relentless, sometimes controversial figure who had dominated headlines was now a symbol of resilience and determination. People started to understand the bigger picture, the mission to build a future that was sustainable, technologically advanced, and capable of reaching the stars. The battles of the past were just that, the past. The future was wide open, and Elon was ready to take on whatever came next. But even as Elon basked in the glow of his renewed focus and the success of his companies, a nagging feeling lingered in the back of his mind. The fight against corruption, the people like Claire Williams who were always lurking in the shadows. It wasn't over. It was an ongoing battle, one that could resurface at any time. And he had to be ready. That night, after a long day of meetings, Elon found himself alone in his office once again. The weight of everything he had been through, and everything still to come, settled in his chest. But this time, it didn't feel like a burden. It felt like a challenge, a call to action that he wasn't about to ignore. With a deep breath, Elon turned back to the work at hand. His team needed him. The world needed him. And he wasn't going to let anything stand in his way. The world had begun to turn its gaze back to Elon Musk. With the storm of the past behind him, he was free to focus on what truly mattered, his vision of the future. SpaceX's Mars mission was gaining momentum, Tesla's electric cars were on the verge of revolutionizing the industry, and his work on sustainable energy was beginning to catch the attention of global leaders. Elon had come out of the darkest chapter of his career stronger than ever, but the nature of his work had taught him one immutable truth. Peace was fleeting, and success always attracted new challenges. One evening, as Elon sat in his office, going over the latest advancements in Tesla's energy division, Sophia entered, her face grave. She had been his ally, his rock, through all of the battles he had faced. She was the first person he turned to when things felt impossible, but now, something about her expression told him that something new was coming. Something dangerous. "Elon," Sophia began, taking a seat across from him, "we've got a problem." Elon didn't look up immediately, but sensed the tension in the air. "What is it?" Sophia hesitated before speaking, her voice low. "There's a new player in the game. Someone who's been quietly undermining your work, and they're starting to gain traction." Elon raised an eyebrow, finally meeting her gaze. "Who?" "A group of powerful investors and tech moguls. They've been quietly aligning themselves against you. They're pushing an agenda that threatens everything you've built, especially Tesla and SpaceX. Elon leaned back in his chair, absorbing the weight of her words. You think they're going after Tesla's lead in the electric vehicle market? Sophia nodded. And SpaceX's monopoly on commercial space exploration. They're putting their money into rival companies, ones that could compete with you on every front. We don't know who's behind it yet, but it's big, really big. Elon's mind began to race. He had expected competition, of course. He always did. But this was different. There was a methodical, calculated approach behind this. Someone was pulling the strings, and the people involved weren't just trying to build their own companies. They were trying to take him down. How serious is this? Elon asked. Very serious, Sophia replied. They're moving fast, and they're starting to make waves. If we don't act now, they'll gain too much ground. We'll lose our edge. Elon stood up, pacing around the room as he processed the new threat. He had been through too much to let this happen. He wasn't going to allow anyone to tear down what he had built. Not again. What's the plan? He asked, turning back to Sophia, determination in his eyes. Sophia looked up at him. We need to find out who's behind this. If we can expose them before they make their move, we can stop them in their tracks. But we need to be careful. They're playing a dangerous game. Elon clenched his fists. I'm not afraid of a fight. We've been through worse. Sophia gave him a small smile, though it didn't reach her eyes. I know you're not. But this isn't just about business. If we don't expose them soon, it could be a lot worse than just losing market share. They could take everything from us. The days that followed were filled with late-night strategy sessions, as Elon and his team worked tirelessly to uncover who was behind the plot to bring down his companies. They dug through financial records, scoured through encrypted communications, and reached out to trusted allies in the tech world. Each clue they uncovered pointed to a web of influential figures, investors, executives, and even government officials, all with their own motivations. Elon could feel the weight of the investigation pressuring him, but as always, he kept his focus. His mind never stopped, and he couldn't afford to lose sight of the bigger picture. Sophia joined him late one night in his office, bringing with her a new lead. We've tracked down one of the key players behind this, Elon. He's a well-connected financier named Richard Hamilton. He's been quietly funding multiple ventures that could compete with Tesla and SpaceX. The thing is, he's not working alone. Elon leaned forward, eyes narrowing. Who else is involved? There's a name we've seen before, David Grant. The mention of David Grant's name struck a nerve. Grant had been a key player in Claire Williams' plan to ruin him, and now, it seemed he was back in the game. This time, with a new team, a new agenda, and a new set of weapons to use against Elon. Grant? Elon said, his voice dark. I should have known he'd be involved. He's the kind of person who doesn't know when to quit. Sophia nodded grimly. It's clear that they're not just targeting Tesla and SpaceX. They want to control the future of technology, and they're willing to do whatever it takes to get there. Elon clenched his jaw. Then they're going to have to go through me. The investigation into Richard Hamilton and David Grant took a darker turn as they uncovered the depth of their plan. This wasn't just about business competition. It was a coordinated effort to monopolize the future of technology. They were working to undermine renewable energy initiatives, destabilize the space industry, and create a new global narrative that would shift the balance of power. As Elon sat in a high-level meeting with his team, he realized that this new threat was unlike anything he had ever faced. This wasn't a lone enemy, like Claire Williams. This was a vast network of powerful individuals, people who had the resources, the influence, and the ruthlessness to do whatever it took to defeat him. Sophia looked at him across the table, her expression a mix of worry and resolve. Elon, we're running out of time. They're moving fast. We need to act now before they make their move. Elon's gaze hardened, his resolve unshaken. We'll expose them. We'll hit them where it hurts. They want to play dirty? Fine. We'll beat them at their own game. The battle lines were drawn. Elon was once again in the fight of his life, but this time, it wasn't just his name on the line. It was the future of humanity itself. The clock was ticking, and Elon Musk knew the stakes had never been higher. With Richard Hamilton and David Grant working in the shadows, their web of deceit expanding with every passing hour. Elon's empire was in jeopardy. SpaceX and Tesla were more than just companies. They were symbols of the future, and that future was under attack. Elon had dealt with obstacles before: legal battles, media attacks, and industry rivals. But this was different. This wasn't a fight over technology or market share. This was a fight for control over the future itself. The team gathered in the conference room, the mood tense. Elon stood at the head of the table, his eyes fixed on the digital map of global energy and space initiatives projected on the screen. The map highlighted the investments and strategic partnerships made by Hamilton and Grant, an intricate web that spanned continents and industries. Sophia stood by his side, her gaze steady. "We've tracked their movements. Hamilton and Grant are working together to destabilize the sectors we've built. They've funded smaller tech startups and energy companies with the goal of disrupting Tesla and SpaceX." Elon's lips tightened. "They're playing the long game. If they can undermine the foundational industries we've created, they can control the market for decades. We can't let that happen." "I don't think we're just looking at market control anymore," said one of Elon's engineers, Alex. "They want to create a new narrative about the future, one that leaves us out of the equation. We're talking about geopolitical influence, media manipulation, and financial markets all being shaped to push their agenda." Elon nodded slowly. "It's a war on multiple fronts." Sophia added, "It's not just about what they're doing now. It's about preventing them from gaining enough power to crush us completely." The team fell silent for a moment. Elon's mind was racing, his focus unwavering. The future wasn't just an abstract concept. It was a battle for the direction humanity would take. The energy revolution, the Mars colonization mission, the very principles he stood for, were all at risk. "We have to expose them," Elon said, his voice sharp with purpose. "Hamilton and Grant have been playing the media and the public for months, but it's time we turn the tables." Sophia raised an eyebrow. "What do you have in mind?" Elon's gaze was piercing, and there was an intensity in his expression that had become all too familiar. "We'll expose them to the world. We'll show everyone who's really behind this. And we'll prove once and for all that they're not only trying to take over the tech world, they're trying to hijack the future of humanity." The first step in their plan was gathering irrefutable evidence. It wasn't just about catching Hamilton and Grant red-handed. It was about showing the world their true intentions. The team worked around the clock, tapping into financial networks, sifting through encrypted communications, and connecting the dots between their various shady dealings. The deeper they dug, the more shocking the revelations became. They discovered that Hamilton and Grant had been funneling money into greenwashing projects, companies that appeared to promote sustainable energy but were actually working to undermine the industry from within. They had also made significant investments in military-grade space technologies, which could shift the balance of power in the space race and put SpaceX's initiatives at risk. But the most damning piece of evidence came when they uncovered a secret meeting between Hamilton, Grant, and several key politicians. In that meeting, the two financiers discussed the creation of a monopoly on global energy, one that would leave no room for competitors like Tesla. It was a conversation laced with manipulation, power plays, and a complete disregard for the future of the planet. "This is it," Sophia said as they reviewed the transcripts of the meeting. "This is the smoking gun. We can use this to expose them. If the public finds out what they've been plotting, their influence will crumble." Elon looked over the documents, his expression darkening. "We need to release this carefully. We can't just drop it all at once. If we do, they'll spin it against us. We need to control the narrative." Sophia nodded. "We'll need a multi-pronged approach. The media, law enforcement, and our allies in the tech industry. Everyone has to be on the same page. This needs to be a public reckoning." Elon's voice was resolute. "It will be. We're not just fighting for Tesla and SpaceX anymore. We're fighting for a future where technology and sustainability are in the hands of the people, not the corrupt elites." As they prepared to unveil the evidence, Elon couldn't help but feel a sense of déjà vu. The last time he had been in this position, he had been fighting for his own survival. Now, he was fighting for something much bigger: the future of humanity's technological progress and the survival of the planet. But even with the evidence in hand, Elon knew this battle wouldn't be easy. Hamilton and Grant weren't just wealthy financiers. They were power players with deep ties to governments, influential media outlets, and a network of allies who would stop at nothing to protect their interests. They needed a strategy that would hit them where it hurt, right in their pockets and their reputation. They would use the truth, but they would also use every weapon at their disposal. As the release date for the first round of information approached, tensions ran high. Elon knew that once they pulled the trigger, there would be no turning back. The media would pick up the story, and the backlash would be intense. But it was the only way to take control of the narrative, to make sure that the world knew the truth. Sophia stood beside him once more, her eyes serious but confident. "We're ready, Elon. This is the moment." Elon glanced around at his team, his allies in this fight. "Let's do it." The news broke the following morning, sending shockwaves through the media. Headlines screamed about the explosive revelations. Tech giants plot to hijack future of humanity. Musk exposes corruption and manipulation. The story spread like wildfire, with investigative journalists picking up the trail and digging deeper. The media turned on Hamilton and Grant, their carefully constructed facades crumbling under the weight of the truth. Within days, public opinion began to shift. The narrative Elon had feared, one that painted him as a villain, was replaced with a much different story. The world began to see Hamilton and Grant for who they truly were, power-hungry elites who had been manipulating the world's most promising industries for their own gain. But the fight wasn't over. While the public now knew the truth, the battle for the future still raged on. Hamilton and Grant were powerful, and they would not go down without a fight. Elon Musk had won the first round, but the war for the future of humanity had only just begun. Elon Musk's world had shifted. The truth about Hamilton and Grant's conspiracy was now out in the open, and the media had turned against them. The shockwaves from the expose reverberated around the world as politicians, business leaders, and ordinary citizens began to question the true motives behind the tech giants' ambitions. But just as Elon thought he had gained the upper hand, he realized that the battle was far from over. The revelation of their schemes had only been the first salvo in a much larger war. Hamilton and Grant, though momentarily reeling, were not the type to give up easily. In fact, they were already planning their retaliation. Elon sat in a secure meeting room at SpaceX headquarters, surrounded by his closest advisors, including Sophia, Alex, and the heads of Tesla's security and PR teams. The atmosphere was tense, as everyone anticipated the next move from their enemies. "We've done what we set out to do," Elon said, his voice low and steady. "The world knows who Hamilton and Grant really are, but they won't go down without a fight. They're going to retaliate, and we need to be ready." Sophia leaned forward, her eyes narrowed. "We've already seen some signs. Their media connections are starting to spin the story, calling the expose a smear campaign. They're even accusing us of manipulating the truth. They've got money, influence, and political connections. This is just the beginning." Elon nodded grimly. "They'll use every weapon in their arsenal to discredit us, especially with how much influence they've bought in the media. They can't afford to let this story stick. If we let them, they'll paint us as the villains." Alex spoke up, his voice tinged with frustration. "We've exposed the truth. What more can they do? Everyone knows they're guilty." "It's not about the truth anymore," Elon said. "It's about control of the narrative. They have the resources to push their version of events. We can't let them manipulate the public. We need to stay ahead of them, and we need to act fast." In the days that followed, Elon's team worked tirelessly to prepare for the inevitable counterattack. They knew that Hamilton and Grant would not sit idly by while their empire was crumbling. They began to notice subtle signs of a coordinated campaign. Fake news stories cropping up, new online accounts flooding social media with misleading information, and whispers among their competitors in the tech industry. But what disturbed Elon the most was the sudden shift in global markets. Tesla's stock began to experience unusual fluctuations, with sudden drops that seemed to be fueled by a series of coordinated sell-offs. SpaceX's contracts with government agencies came under scrutiny, with certain high-profile political figures questioning the company's transparency and future viability. Sophia was the first to point out the connection. "Elon, this isn't just a media war. They're going after our financial base. Someone's manipulating the market to create doubt about our company's futures. It's bigger than just Hamilton and Grant. They've got other allies. Elon's expression darkened. I knew they wouldn't go down quietly. But this? This is a direct attack on everything we've built. If we don't respond quickly, we could lose more than just our reputations. We could lose our companies. Alex looked at Elon, his eyes serious. We need to take this fight to them. We can't let them control the conversation. We've got to hit back, but it has to be with precision. We need to make sure the public knows what they're really up to. Elon clenched his fists, his mind whirring with possibilities. We need to expose the financial manipulation. We need to go after them where it hurts. Show the world that their attack isn't just personal. It's a calculated attempt to destroy the future of clean energy and space exploration. Sophia raised a finger. We'll need more than just evidence. We need to make it undeniable, real-time proof of the manipulation. Something the media can't ignore. Elon's team set to work, reaching out to their trusted allies in the financial sector and media, pulling in experts in market manipulation, and compiling the evidence they had gathered. They would expose the underhanded tactics used to destabilize their companies by revealing the depth of Hamilton and Grant's web of deceit. Meanwhile, Elon knew they also needed to strengthen their hold on the public narrative. The media was a battlefield, and they had to control the message. Elon personally took to social media to address the situation directly, making sure to leverage the transparency and openness he had become known for. In a live-streamed interview, he addressed millions of viewers. The facts are clear. Richard Hamilton and David Grant have been manipulating markets, infiltrating political systems, and attempting to sabotage the progress we've made with Tesla and SpaceX. These men represent a dangerous alliance of elites who want to control the future for their own profit. They are trying to undo everything we've built, and we can't let that happen. The live stream was watched by millions, and the response was overwhelming. Supporters of Elon and his mission rallied to his side, sharing the broadcast across social platforms and calling for accountability. But the other side didn't remain quiet for long. The media war escalated. Hamilton and Grant struck back with a vengeance, paying influencers and news outlets to downplay the revelations. They accused Elon of being a tech tyrant who was using the press to bully his competition while shifting blame for the financial manipulation onto rogue investors within Tesla's own ranks. The battle had shifted into a full-scale war of information. Elon knew that in a fight of this magnitude, perception often became reality. They needed to turn the tables again. It was then that an unexpected ally appeared on the scene. Mia Carrington, a leading journalist who had previously exposed the corrupt practices of powerful CEOs in the tech world. Mia had always been skeptical of Elon Musk's larger-than-life persona, but after digging into the new allegations, she realized the truth. Hamilton and Grant were using their considerable resources to manipulate the media, market, and political systems to their benefit. Mia contacted Elon's team with an offer to help expose the truth once and for all. Your team has been doing the right thing, but you're missing one crucial element, Mia said during a secure call with Elon. You need a platform that people trust, a narrative that's been built on transparency and fact. I've got the reach and the credibility to make sure this story sticks. Let me help. Elon, who had seen many journalists come and go, was cautious. What do you want in return? Mia's voice was confident. I want the truth. I want to make sure the public sees the entire picture, what Hamilton and Grant have been doing, and how they've been manipulating the system. I want to expose them for who they really are. Elon thought for a moment. He knew that bringing Mia into the fold could tip the scales in their favor. You've got a deal. With Mia's help, Elon's team set the stage for the next move. They gathered irrefutable evidence, including transcripts of private meetings, stock manipulation algorithms, and proof of political collusion. Mia worked with a network of independent investigative journalists, ensuring the story would be told on their terms. In a joint effort, Mia released an exclusive exposé, revealing Hamilton and Grant's entire operation. This wasn't just an article. It was a multi-platform, deep-dive investigation that included video footage, interactive data maps, and first-hand accounts from whistleblowers. The exposé hit the media like a bombshell, and the public's perception shifted dramatically. Hamilton and Grant were now exposed for what they truly were: power-hungry manipulators who were willing to destroy everything for their own gain. Their reputation crumbled almost overnight, and their financial empire began to unravel. But Elon knew that the war was far from over. This was just one battle. There were still many more challenges ahead, and the forces that sought to derail him would never give up. But Elon Musk was ready. The future depended on it. In the wake of the explosive exposé, Hamilton and Grant's empire began to crumble at a speed no one could have predicted. The media turned against them in waves. The public was outraged by their manipulation, and investors fled. The two financiers tried to push back, but the truth had taken on a life of its own. The tide had turned. But even as Elon Musk watched the unraveling of their empire with cautious optimism, he knew that this battle was far from over. What had begun as a war of corporate dominance had escalated into a fight for survival. His survival, and the survival of everything he had worked to build. Sophia and Alex sat across from Elon in his private office at SpaceX headquarters. The mood was tense. It was a time for celebration. But they all knew that the end of one chapter meant the beginning of another. The financial market is still unstable, Sophia noted, scrolling through a report on her tablet. Tesla's stock has begun to stabilize, but there's still a lot of volatility. Hamilton and Grant's allies are pushing to capitalize on the uncertainty. They won't let this go easily. Alex, ever the strategist, leaned forward, his arms crossed. We've exposed the corruption, but now we need to ensure that the narrative is irreversible. We can't let them come back with a comeback story that paints them as the victims. We need to go after their remaining strongholds. Elon's eyes darkened as he looked at the figures on the screen. We know their remaining influence lies in two places, politics and energy. We've already disrupted their media campaign, but we need to dismantle their connections in government and finance. Sophia nodded. We need to expose how deeply their tentacles have sunk into key political players. If we don't cut those ties, they'll be able to regroup and mount a serious counterattack. Elon leaned back in his chair, his mind spinning with strategies. We've got the public on our side. They're tired of the same old corporate games. If we can break their last strongholds, we can truly win this battle. The first move came in the form of a leaked government report, one that was meant to stay hidden in the bowels of bureaucracy. The report revealed that Hamilton and Grant had used their financial power to influence key political decisions, funneling money into campaigns, creating favorable regulations, and even bribing lawmakers to shape policies that would benefit their holdings. The leak was carefully orchestrated by one of Elon's trusted allies in the government who had grown disillusioned with the corporate overlord's grip on power. The report was a bombshell. Elon's team, with the help of investigative journalists like Mia, followed up with real-time evidence, publishing details of the influence campaign on a global scale. The story exploded on social media, with users sharing articles, videos, and memes calling out the political corruption. Hamilton and Grant's influence on the political system, long a secretive affair, was now laid bare for all to see. At the same time, the team shifted their focus to energy, specifically the greenwashing projects Hamilton and Grant had invested in. These projects, which pretended to be solutions for clean energy, were in fact designed to sabotage the industry and protect the fossil fuel status quo. Elon's team worked with environmental activists, energy experts, and grassroots organizations to uncover the true intentions behind these initiatives. They released a comprehensive report proving that Hamilton and Grant were not just corrupt. They were actively preventing the advancement of clean energy for personal gain. As the reports and revelations spread, the pressure on Hamilton and Grant grew unbearable. Their remaining allies in the political sphere scrambled to distance themselves, and their connections in the energy sector began to unravel. The truth had become an unstoppable force. But even as Elon watched his enemies falter, he couldn't afford to become complacent. The opposition might have been wounded, but it wasn't dead. A week later, the unexpected happened. Elon's phone buzzed. It was a news alert. Hamilton and Grant respond with an unprecedented legal challenge against Elon Musk and Tesla. Elon raised an eyebrow. He had known they wouldn't go down quietly, but a legal assault was a new twist. He quickly read through the article. In the statement, Hamilton and Grant's legal team claimed that they were being wrongfully attacked by Musk's companies, accusing them of defamation and unfair market practices. They vowed to take Musk, Tesla, and SpaceX to court, seeking damages in the billions. "This is it," Elon muttered under his breath. They've gone for the jugular. Sophia, standing at the door, glanced at him. What's our move? Elon didn't hesitate. We fight back. We've been preparing for this. They're trying to scare us, but we're not backing down. We've got the truth, and we've got the people behind us. Let's make sure the world knows that we're not the ones trying to manipulate the system. They are. The legal battle was nothing short of a spectacle. Lawyers from both sides filed motions, counterclaims, and mountains of evidence. The courtroom was filled with high-powered attorneys, media representatives, and even political figures who had been sucked into the drama. But Elon wasn't afraid. He had been through battles before. He had faced public scrutiny, legal challenges, and personal attacks. He had fought for the future of humanity in space and on Earth. This was no different. The courtroom became just another arena for him to fight for the truth. With the help of Mia Carrington and his legal team, Elon's side presented an airtight case. They demonstrated how Hamilton and Grant had been manipulating the legal system, the media, and the financial markets to further their own agenda. They exposed how they had used their wealth to twist the narrative and control the political discourse. But the turning point came when Elon himself took the stand. His testimony was a masterstroke. Calm, collected, and unwavering, he told the court about the real stakes. Not just for Tesla and SpaceX, but for the future of clean energy, space exploration, and the fight against corporate corruption. I didn't build Tesla to become a billionaire, Elon said in the courtroom, his voice cutting through the tension. I built it to change the world. And I didn't start SpaceX to conquer space. I started it to ensure humanity has a future beyond Earth. I've dedicated my life to these causes, and I won't let anyone, no matter how powerful, stand in the way of that future. The courtroom was silent. The impact of Elon's words was undeniable. The jury could see the difference between the man who fought for the future and the men who fought for profit. The ruling came down 2 weeks later, and it was a monumental victory for Elon Musk. The court found Hamilton and Grant guilty of financial manipulation, defamation, and illegal market practices. They were ordered to pay a staggering amount in damages, and their remaining assets were frozen as part of the legal settlement. In the aftermath of the trial, Elon's reputation was solidified. The public saw him as the underdog who had fought against the corrupt elites and won. The narrative had shifted completely. But even with this victory, Elon knew that the war for the future wasn't over. There were always new battles to fight, new obstacles to overcome. But for the first time in a long time, he felt confident. The truth had won, and with it, the future of humanity. The courtroom battle had ended, but the war was far from over. The victory over Hamilton and Grant was monumental, a win not only for Elon Musk but for the ideals he stood for. It was a moment of triumph, but the real work was just beginning. The ripples of this battle had just started to spread, and Elon knew that with every action, there were consequences. The media was filled with headlines about the trial and the aftermath, and while many celebrated Elon's triumph, there were still forces that sought to discredit him, to undermine his success. Yet, something had shifted in the air. The world had begun to see through the smoke and mirrors of corporate greed, and people were waking up to the realities of the fight for the future. Clean energy, space exploration, and the fight for fairness. Elon had become a symbol of resistance. Sophia, Alex, and the rest of the team had been working around the clock to ensure that the aftermath of the trial would play out in their favor. They knew that the next few weeks would be crucial in maintaining their momentum. But as the dust settled from the legal battle, a new, unexpected challenge emerged. Elon sat in a meeting room at Tesla headquarters, surrounded by his closest advisors. The mood was somber, a sharp contrast to the high spirits that had followed their victory in court. The financial markets had stabilized, and Tesla's stock was once again on the rise, but there were whispers in the industry, rumors that the next major hurdle wasn't going to come from Hamilton and Grant's camp. It was something far more subtle, far more insidious. We've been tracking these new developments, Sophia began, as she presented a series of reports. There's a new coalition forming. It's a mix of rival tech companies, certain government officials, and even some environmental groups. They're not happy with how the narrative has shifted. They're trying to frame us as monopolistic, as too dominant in the clean energy sector. Alex added, we knew that the corruption that Hamilton and Grant exposed wasn't just a personal vendetta. They had support from others in power, people who don't want the status quo to change. Now, those voices are organizing against us, using the same arguments they used to attack us before. That we're too big, too influential, and that we're using our power to squash competition. Elon sighed deeply. He had been expecting something like this. The victory in court had been sweet, but it had only intensified the spotlight on him. The more success he had, the more enemies he made. The world was a battlefield, and even when you won, you couldn't rest. Is it just the usual suspects? Elon asked, already guessing the answer. Sophia nodded. Yes, but it's different this time. These aren't just corporate competitors. This is a well-coordinated pushback, using both legal and public relations channels to paint us as a threat to innovation. They're trying to position themselves as the defenders of fair competition, even as they back systems that benefit the old guard. Alex looked concerned. They're pushing the narrative that Tesla's dominance in the EV market is harming the growth of other electric car manufacturers. They're positioning us as the villain in a David versus Goliath story. And if that sticks, we risk alienating consumers, investors, and even government allies who see this as a political issue. Elon was quiet for a moment, weighing the situation. He had fought for transparency, for a future where clean energy and innovation could thrive. But now, he was up against a much more powerful enemy, one that played the game with finesse and subtlety. We need to counter this narrative before it takes hold, Elon said, his voice steady but resolute. We've been pushing the limits for years, but we have to make sure we don't become the thing we fought against. We need to redefine what competition means in the 21st century. To fight back, Elon knew they would need to take a multifaceted approach. They couldn't just defend themselves. They needed to pivot, showing the world that Tesla, SpaceX, and all his ventures weren't just about profit, but about pushing humanity forward. Elon's team worked to orchestrate a response, a new campaign that would go beyond just defending their position and instead champion the very ideals they stood for. Elon made the decision to bring in experts from various industries, from renewable energy to technology, to talk about the importance of collaboration in advancing global progress. He wanted to show that Tesla's success wasn't about crushing competition, but about creating a new world of possibilities where no one had to compete for the future. Everyone could share in it. We're not here to fight against innovation, Elon said during a press conference. We're here to lead it, and to show the world that progress doesn't have to come at the expense of others. Clean energy, space exploration, these are not zero-sum games. If we all work together, the future will be brighter for everyone. The message was powerful. It wasn't just about defending Tesla's dominance. It was about redefining what success meant in a world facing so many challenges. Elon wanted to paint the picture of a future where companies collaborated to solve the world's most pressing issues, rather than fighting for control over them. But just as the campaign began to take hold, an unexpected twist came in the form of a new legal challenge. One evening, as Elon was preparing to head home after another grueling day, his phone rang. It was a call from Mia Carrington, the journalist who had been instrumental in exposing Hamilton and Grant's corruption. Her voice was strained. Elon, there's something you need to know, Mia said, her tone urgent. I've been investigating this new coalition that's forming against you, and I've uncovered something big. Elon's pulse quickened. What is it? I've got proof, Mia said, that some of the same political figures and tech executives you're up against are secretly funneling money into a series of environmental campaigns. They're positioning themselves as green energy warriors, but they're using it as a cover for a much larger plan to undermine Tesla and SpaceX. They want to slow down the transition to clean energy and keep control of the old energy systems in place. Elon felt a chill run down his spine. The stakes had just gotten higher. These were no longer just business rivals. This was a fight for the future of the planet. And they weren't playing by the same rules. What's their endgame? Elon asked, trying to make sense of the situation. They're trying to create a false narrative that Tesla is monopolizing the clean energy industry. They want to force you into a corner and regulate you out of the game. They're working with regulators, political lobbyists, and a network of environmentalists to push new policies that will stifle innovation in clean energy and space exploration. Elon's mind raced as the pieces began to fit together. They had just fought and won against one conspiracy, but now another, even more sophisticated plot was unfolding. This wasn't just about business. It was about controlling the very future of humanity. The next few weeks were a whirlwind of strategy, counterattacks, and unexpected alliances. Elon's team worked with media, journalists, and environmental activists to expose the true motives behind the new coalition. They used a combination of legal action, public relations, and grassroots organizing to fight back against the powerful forces that sought to stifle progress. As the pressure mounted, Elon realized that this wasn't just a corporate battle. It was a battle for the future itself. The stakes had never been higher, but neither had his resolve. The months following the new legal challenge were unlike any that Elon Musk had faced before. Every move he made was scrutinized, every decision weighed under the magnifying glass of his enemies, and even the smallest misstep could be twisted into ammunition to use against him. But Elon had weathered storms before. He was no stranger to pressure, and his resolve had only solidified with time. Sophia, Alex, and Mia sat around a conference table in the war room at Tesla headquarters. They were exhausted, but determination burned in their eyes. This new coalition, composed of political heavyweights, rival tech moguls, and a group of well-placed environmental activists, had managed to paint Tesla as a monopolistic force threatening the entire clean energy sector. They were framing Elon as the villain of a tale that had long been considered a battle for the planet's future. They had managed to manipulate the narrative so effectively that it was no longer just a corporate fight. It was a public relations war for the heart and soul of the energy industry. Elon, we need to address this head-on, Sophia said, tapping on her tablet, displaying the latest media reports. We can't let them continue to control the narrative. If we don't take immediate action, this could escalate to a level we're not prepared for. Alex chimed in. We're already seeing the effects. Media outlets are reporting on Tesla's unchecked power, calling it dangerous, and even government regulators are starting to listen. This isn't just corporate warfare anymore. It's political. We're being positioned as a threat to democracy. Elon had been quiet, listening, his eyes narrowing as he processed the information. The enemies he was facing weren't just trying to outcompete him. They were trying to outmaneuver him in ways that went far beyond business. They had crafted a story that could reshape public opinion about Tesla, SpaceX, and his entire legacy. And they had allies in high places who were all too eager to feed into the narrative. You're right, Elon finally said, his voice steady, but his eyes burned with resolve. They've underestimated us, but this isn't just a battle for the business. This is a fight for the future of humanity, and we're not going to let them control it. The next few days were a flurry of activity. Elon and his team crafted a multifaceted approach to combat the growing coalition's narrative. They began working with environmental leaders who shared their vision, those who knew the truth about the importance of clean energy and space exploration for the future of the planet. They reached out to political allies who had been aligned with their vision, securing support from those who believed in the need for drastic change in the energy sector. But they didn't stop there. Elon knew the battle wasn't just won through words, it was won through actions. He launched a bold new initiative. Tesla would build a network of global clean energy hubs, creating a worldwide infrastructure for renewable energy in cities, rural areas, and underserved regions. This would not only serve to prove that Tesla wasn't seeking to monopolize energy, but that they were opening doors for others to join the cause of sustainable progress. Elon made it clear that Tesla wasn't about stifling competition. It was about building a better, more equitable world for everyone. The campaign was unprecedented. Billions of dollars were funneled into the Global Clean Energy Hubs initiative, with the goal of providing renewable energy to millions of people around the world. The message was loud and clear. Tesla was creating opportunities, not monopolies. They weren't just creating a market, they were creating a movement. But the opposition wasn't done yet. The coalition they were up against had deep pockets, political influence, and a willingness to use underhanded tactics to undermine Elon's every move. In response, Elon prepared to take the battle directly to them. The culmination of the struggle came in the form of a final showdown, a massive global summit on climate change and energy innovation. Leaders from every corner of the world would gather, with Elon Musk taking center stage alongside other high-profile figures in the energy and technology industries. It was a chance for Elon to lay out his vision for the future and prove that his mission wasn't about dominance. It was about collaboration and innovation. In the days leading up to the summit, tensions mounted. Elon's team worked tirelessly to ensure that the presentation would be flawless and the message would resonate across the globe. Meanwhile, the coalition's forces had been working behind the scenes to undermine the event, spreading false narratives, bribing officials, and attempting to sway public opinion with their own agenda. But Elon was ready. He had prepared for this moment for years. The day of the summit arrived, and the world watched as the biggest names in technology, energy, and politics took the stage. As Elon stepped up to the podium, the room fell silent. The air crackled with anticipation. Elon Musk, the once controversial billionaire, now stood as the leader of a movement that was fighting for nothing less than the future of humanity. This is not just a summit about energy, Elon began, his voice clear and commanding. This is about survival. It's about ensuring that we leave a habitable planet for future generations. It's about giving every person on this earth the chance to live in a world powered by clean, sustainable energy. He paused, letting the weight of his words sink in. We've built a company based on this belief. Tesla isn't here to dominate. We're here to lead the charge, to show that clean energy can be affordable, efficient, and available to everyone. But we can't do it alone. We need collaboration. We need other companies, governments, and industries to join this mission. Because when we work together, we can build a future that benefits us all. Elon's message was powerful. It was simple, but it resonated with the audience in ways that no amount of media spin could undo. He wasn't just defending Tesla. He was calling on the world to come together, to fight for a common cause, and to leave behind the old systems that had created the problems of the past. As the speech concluded, the room erupted in applause. The world took notice. The Clean Energy Hubs project began to take shape, with governments and companies from around the globe pledging support. Tesla's mission was no longer seen as a solitary endeavor. It had become a global movement. The coalition of rivals that had sought to take Elon down crumbled in the face of overwhelming support for his vision. The political and business forces that had once opposed him realized they couldn't outlast the momentum of the change he had set in motion. Their campaign had backfired, and in the end, they had only strengthened Elon's position as a leader of the clean energy revolution. As the summit came to a close, Elon stepped off the stage, a sense of quiet triumph settling over him. He had fought for the future of humanity, and for the first time, he felt that the battle was truly won. He had faced the darkest forces, and he had emerged victorious. Sophia, Alex, and Mia gathered around him, their faces reflecting the same mixture of exhaustion and satisfaction. "You did it, Elon," Sophia said, her voice filled with pride. Elon looked out at the crowd, the weight of the journey finally lifting. "We did it. This is just the beginning. The future is still out there waiting for us. And we're just getting started." Hit subscribe and leave a comment with where you're watching from. This story might just spark a new beginning. What's one thing that always pushes you forward, even when things get tough?